I'd like to call the Design Subcommittee of the Concord Middle School Building Committee to order. It's October 25, 2019. I will note that we are being recorded. Good morning, all. Good morning. We have a few items on our agenda, but of course a very central one, and that is the selection of candidates to go on a short list to be considered for the design function and responsibility for this project. First order of business is minutes from meetings past. We have draft minutes for our meeting of September 12 and October 10. Do we have a motion for approval?
I'll move.
All right. I think we all have received them, looked them over. I'm comfortable with them. Do we have a second for this?
Second.
All right. Discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
All right. The minutes from the two meetings are approved and will be posted accordingly. Communications, I know of one, and that is an email that I received this week. There was a follow-up to an earlier communication from parent representatives in the community about the subject of wireless radiation in the new building. And the question was, what is happening vis-a-vis that consideration? And my reply was, here are the upcoming meetings, and at more than a few visioning sessions, I think parents will be encouraged to surface any of their wants and needs and concerns. Anybody else have anything, Lori?
No.
Okay, all right. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn this over to Mike and Andy to help us sort of set the table for the day. We spent some time looking at how we were going to proceed, and we have then gone through the 14 proposals that we received. I think there was a lot to impress in those proposals, which isn't going to make our job easy, certainly. We've done our independent appraisals of these, so now what we want to do is roll out this process that is central to today's meeting, and hopefully by mid-morning we're going to have a sense of the 3 or 4 for shortlist that we think are deserving of interviews on November 6th. Our recommendations today, whatever comes out of today's meeting, goes to the entire school building committee on Monday morning. I believe that's at 7:30 in this room for their consideration, and based on that full committee authorization and approval, Hill then will proceed with reference checks that go deep and the scheduling of the interviews on our behalf. Mike, Andy?
All right, so like Cora mentioned, the good news is we have 14 proposals. The bad news is that we have 14 proposals. And I think we've got 14 quality designers here, so that's a great thing. You know, that was one of the things we talked about, is that this is a great project, and I think everybody, you know, a lot of people want to be part of it, so that's the good news. In general, I think before we start talking specifics, I know we have a lot to get through. I think it might be just kind of important for everybody to kind of keep in mind, big picture here, what are we trying to get at? What is the ideal candidate for us? And, you know, thinking about the educational program, thinking about the sustainability, thinking about the cost, thinking about the experience of the team. The experience of the company is important, but the team, to me, is more important. You know, you need to have that company's A team, not that company's B team. And again, I think we've got a lot of strong teams here as well. So it's going to be, I think the expression I've used before is we're choosing the best of the best here. We're looking for things, and there might be something that disqualifies somebody that seems very minor.
Yes.
But there's 14 quality, designers here that we've got to narrow it down. And I think the goal that I would shoot for right now is 4, because you always want the 3, but if somebody gets another job tomorrow and they say, you know what, I'm just too busy, I can't do it, I want to back out, you don't want to be down to 2. So I think 4 is kind of the magic number that I'd be shooting for. So that means there's 10 probably qualified designers that we've got to cross off the list. So with that, I don't know if people have thoughts, general thoughts maybe before we get to specifics on anybody. If we can start with that, and then I do have 2 specifics updates. I think everybody's got an updated version of this. If you notice, there's 2 yellow boxes that we highlighted. It's 2 things that changed, if you will, or have asterisks since we sent it out at the beginning of the week. I just want to give a clarification for everybody so that we can know that. But any questions, comments, any thoughts about the process here, other than that we just got to try and get moving on it pretty reasonable?
I had a couple thoughts, and this is open for discussion, but it seems like, at least in my own ranking, there were sort of 3 tiers of candidates. There were like some that had significantly lower scoring, and part of it mostly it had to do with experience, not so much qualifications, but like relevant experience. And then there were a handful that went like through the middle, sort of they're qualified and they're good, maybe, they were okay at sustainability or okay at, relevant experience. And then I had the rest were high scoring and I just kind of, at the end, when I looked at the summary sheet, I was like, oh wow, I actually have like 3 buckets of, of people, right? So for me, I'd be comfortable, and I don't know how others feel, like the lowest, I have people under 100 points. That's less than half of what, I think we're at 210 is our maximum. In my mind, I was like, I don't know if others felt the same about those firms. If so, then maybe they are, we don't spend a lot of time talking about them, like they don't meet the minimum criteria or whatever it is. And then maybe we talk about the ones that are high scoring and what's exciting about them, and I don't know if there'll be 7 of them or 10 of them that we can agree are worth spending the time talking about. And then if we want to speak to the middle range and say, why didn't they make the cut? Like, what was it about them? I don't know how others ended up. I haven't seen one other person's score sheet. I have no idea what others did. But in my world, that's how I like drop them into 3 buckets. And I don't know, as a suggestion, like I want to focus on the good, right? Like I want to focus on what's exciting about the firms that scored high.
Other thoughts?
I'm similar to Donna in that I have 3 buckets as well.
And in addition to...
And we didn't plan that. I have not even talked to you in a week,
And I would
so.
chime in, it's reassuring to know that the experts went to the 3 bucket group, and I did the 3 bucket group.
Yeah,
Now, I guess what's in each of our buckets is probably different.
Well, that's why I'm like, let's talk about it,
I also know that you, a harder score, that I thought I was at times being a very hard scorer, and some of your scores were lower than mine.
Well, I was surprised, but there were certain things I sadly had to give 0s to because they just, the information wasn't
Was not
there.
there, yeah.
So, I don't like doing that, but if they don't provide the information, I can't give them a score.
Right.
And some of it was really important information.
So,
I found discriminating between them more difficult than you because I don't have the trained eye that some of you have for this particular kind of assessment. But I too have my range. I think what we're hearing is that we have the ranking that in fact indeed has some highs and some lows, which is where we need to be. So now how do we handle the highs and the lows collectively? That's what we're doing today. So we've heard a proposal that what we do is focus for a few minutes on what might be on the low end to see if we have consensus that we drop those off, and then narrow the focus to why those on the high end are there, and how do we sift and sort those.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound acceptable to folks?
Yeah.
So with that, before I'll kind of kick off. I'll talk about these 2 points and then maybe just kind of give an overview. One of the things I want to remind everybody of is that, Hill is not a voting member here. We're here just to advise you, give you some experience, and one of the things I might do a little expounding on here is our experience with maybe a couple of the different applicants, on current projects or past projects, that type of thing. Something that maybe you can't get out of reading the binder, that type of thing. So with that,
Are you comfortable with him front-loading it that way for us?
Can we remind everyone that we're not using firm names?
that's what I was just
Oh,
gonna say.
good.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
sorry, I'm ahead of you,
we
but I
just set
just want
this
to be
up.
careful.
I think everybody should have a copy. It should have the yellow boxes. And if you look across the top of the maroon there, we have applicant number 1, applicant number 2, applicant, and we're just going to refer to the companies as those titles. And then if we're talking about individuals, we'll talk about the project manager or the project architect or the principal, that type of thing. So on applicant number 1, we just wanted to note that the asterisk there was one of the requests was on the cover letter. They acknowledge certain items, one of those being that the lead is MCPPO certified, which basically means that they have a good understanding of Massachusetts public procurement laws. And applicant number 1 provided an invoice showing that their lead is signed up for the MCPPO course, and they would be certified prior to being awarded, but they, I think they were actually taking the course today. Like yesterday and today or something like that. So, but they
There
didn't.
was one this week.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we actually have a gentleman in our office that was there yesterday and today. So that's why I think about it. So they didn't actually have that requirement, but they're in the process of getting it. So we had said yes earlier in the week, and when we followed back on it, we realized that it was a sort of yes. So, and then so that's something that.
Does everyone understand the implications of that?
Yeah.
Yes?
And just to follow, like, had that preliminary qualification not existed at all, would you have recommended that group to make that initial cut or not?
I think,
And obviously the facts are different now, they're getting the training versus they never had the training and never would.
right. So the specifics about the MCPPO, I think it's good to have that. I think, for example, I would say more than half the people in my office have it. So it's not just the lead. It's Andy has it and Julie has it. And it's almost a matter of fact that we have everybody in our office. And I would think if they had somebody in their office, they would have put it in there. So I wouldn't say that is a concern outright, but what it did do is it made me jump to the end of the book, and I went to their project list to look at what kind of Massachusetts public school projects they've done, and there wasn't a very long list.
Right.
In fact, I don't know if there was
No.
any.
It's zero.
They fell into my
Right.
low bucket. They were honestly the lowest score on mine for that reason, when I mentioned relevant experience. Just so you know, that's a disqualifier for the MSBA. You have to have it.
Right.
Someone has to. And typically they want the project manager, or like, I've had it for so many years, and you have to keep it up. So every couple of years you have to renew. And the MSBA will accept a renewal. They only do these X amount, twice a year. It's like spring and fall. So the MSBA, if you miss the spring and you're due, they'll accept a renewal, for the fall, but I don't think they'll accept a sign up for an original. The original is like a 2-day course that you're tested on. It's intense. So just so you know, from an MSBA standpoint, I think it's a requirement. I think it's a
It is.
non-starter for them.
And we had it
So-
in there, so it's something to think about.
Yeah. But it spoke to the fact that they haven't done any public, they've done schools,
Right.
The-
I think
so
they did some
portfolio
public-
is very skewed that way.
K-12.
It's private
So-
schools mostly.
They were
Right.
private
So for me, they were in my middle bucket. I didn't feel like, super strongly. I thought they had a strong application. They scored low because they had a number of zeros, because
Yeah,
based on our metric, it says public schools, and I didn't see any projects there. So
yep.
I guess I'm curious how the team feels about, they clearly have school experience, but it's not public school. I guess I don't feel like they were there were other firms that I liked more, so I don't feel super strongly about them. I mean, it would be somewhat interesting to have them, maybe depending on our 4 slot.
Well,
Do we just see how good are they? There's 2 firms, I would say. I would say them and number 3.
Those were my 2 low buckets.
Right, which had, because there's.
Again,
had a
relevant
lot of
experience.
zero. Right, so I think we can lump those 2 firms together and say, do we want to entertain a firm that has little to no public school experience?
So here are my other
And I don't have
thoughts
a
on applicant 1. Not only do they have no MSBA projects and it's all private school work, in section 2, the project ranges were 2,000 square feet to 100,000 square feet in size, and the 300-ish thousand square feet were all gymnasiums and field houses.
Right.
So food for thought, like a comprehensive 6 to 8 middle school standalone, nothing. The
Yeah.
closest they have is a 51,000 private middle school.
No,
So those were my notes on relevant experience.
I'm pretty much in line with that.
So-
I would say it's almost as if you have very talented folks who
Mhm.
look at this as an opportunity to expand into this area. And
Yeah.
if
They're trying.
They're trying,
Yeah.
and were they to do it, they add something very significant to their staple talent.
Yeah.
But I think relative to the 13 others,
Mhm.
I put them also in the low end.
And
Just-
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Charlie. One other thing that, and I'm just checking my notes that I made. They never mentioned the MSBA process or deliverables, which concerned me, because we ask in the RFP to follow that process because it's tried and true and it's, it's
It
a
works.
process that's known. Never once mentioned it, which concerned me, because I'm not sure they understand the breadth of what we're asking for. So that was concerning to me. So on that, out of 15 points, it was low. It wasn't 0, but it was pretty low because there were other criteria within that. So just food for thought. Those were my concerns about them. I think that, overall, they have a beautiful portfolio.
I thought the portfolio was also quite extraordinary. I said, wow.
Yeah.
But the note I have, the overall note I had was not much middle school or public school.
Right.
And the proposal overall just didn't speak to me as appropriate.
It
for
was,
what we're
I wrote it was
For what we're
generic.
doing, for what we're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
Although I thought that there was excellence in the document. So it's interesting how my reaction is kind of aligned with,
That was very well written.
yeah,
It was very well written.
it's a nicely done document.
I can tell you as someone who's written a lot of these, it's somewhat generic. I try to customize every
Yeah,
single
that's what I was
proposal that I
looking
write, unique to, and you might have seen it in others, because others did it well. It seemed very generic, like copy paste, like it's a good proposal for another town too, right? That's how I felt about it, and I look at it through a very different lens than all of you do, but those were my thoughts on them, so I don't know if others are comfortable knocking, I don't know how
I
people.
think we,
My range is
Sounds like
much
not-
narrower perhaps than yours, nonetheless, they're in my bottom third for the reasons we discussed.
Okay, so do we talk about them anymore?
I think any of us can bring it back, but for the present time, I think we're leaving this one behind.
Okay.
We're comfortable with that?
And before I jump into the next one, just one thing, just again, my thought, kind of hearing what people say. I think the discussion should be had around this project.
Yes.
The $80 to $100 million middle school project that we're looking to do. And I think, I look at some of these firms that if it was a smaller project, or maybe if it was an elementary school, or, there's other, very small differences that might make me think a company that's maybe a middle tier would be an upper tier if it was a smaller project, that type of thing. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. So, so the other one I just wanted that we had an update on is applicant number 7. So again, what that is there was requirements to provide certificate of non-collusion, corporate authority, and tax compliance. And when we went through it, they didn't actually have it. And that kind of, again, is a statutory requirement. We contacted them and said, we didn't get this, and they said, oh, we included it. And there was some back and forth, and apparently their printer missed it. They have forwarded it to us, we have a copy of it in hand, but it wasn't in the original package. So, again, just want that food for thought for everybody so that they understand. So, open process on that, so.
and that would be a requirement of the MSBA process.
Yeah. But again, we do have a copy of it now. We've had situations, this isn't a function issue, it's a form issue. And you can, as a committee, choose to reject it because of that, or you can choose to say it was a form issue, you know, if you will, a typo or a mistake, an oversight, and they have given that information prior to us coming to the meeting.
It's not as if they didn't have it, they just it didn't get provided, so we're
Right.
asked.
Right.
But that,
I don't know how people feel.
it's interesting, so I'll say that firm, number 7, was in my bucket 1 with a big asterisk, because they also called us the town of Ashton multiple times. I mean, to your point, they had a number of mistakes, and this is just another one that they had in their submission.
When you
So-
say bucket 1, is that 1 is good or
One
1
is,
is bad?
I'm saying 1 is good, yeah, let's.
1 is good.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I would say that from my perspective, it was one of the better proposals, with the big caveat that on their first deliverable to us, they had some glaring mistakes, and now it's just another one.
Agreed.
So,
I had the same, they were one of my higher scorers, but I picked up on that
yeah,
as well.
so I don't know what to say about that,
I
but,
wonder if people would speak to one of my concerns with this one, and that was the final criteria, number 20, the manager experience with the team. What did people come up with there? Mine came up low, but I'm not entirely confident. Because you have to discern something like experience from what they present.
You're talking the actual project
Project
manager?
manager?
Yes.
I'm gonna open it up here real quick, because I think if we've done work, we're actually doing work with this part right now, and I think if the project manager is the person I think it is, we've worked with them on 2 separate projects with this team.
I didn't have any concerns about the project manager,
All right, thank you.
but I,
Not manager per se, but experience working.
experience with it, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, okay. All right, my concerns are allayed. Okay. Anything else on
Yeah, so-
number?
So their project manager, sorry, just their
Yeah,
project
please.
manager,
Are we talking
we
about number
worked with
7?
them,
Number
with this
7, yeah.
team
Mhm.
for at least 4 or 5 years.
Oh, got it,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I liked their submission, I mean, but. So maybe we don't touch that one right now.
Okay.
Leave that.
In full disclosure, I worked for that firm for a while. I don't know everyone on the team, I haven't been there in years and years, but just so everyone knows. And I have a disclosure form with the town, just so everyone knows, because I pretty much know a lot of these people.
Well, maybe.
I started my career with that firm, so just
Maybe
full
can we-
disclosure.
Can we go back to number 3, and, because I feel like they're in the same bucket as number 1.
Number 3, yeah.
And I mean, they weren't my bucket 1, they were a number 2 bucket for me, but they had a lot of zeros because their public school experience was pretty limited, so.
Same. My other comment about them, as it relates to schedule, which is very important to us, as we all know. They show town meeting happening before the end of SD, and then another one happening in the fall after SD. So I don't know if anyone picked up on that, but that to me says they don't know the process. We don't ask for money from the town and the taxpayers until we know exactly what this project will cost, which happens at the end of schematic design. So that was a red flag for me, and that was, we had up to 15 points on that one, and I scored them quite low. They provided a schedule, but for me, the information didn't feel real because it just told me they didn't understand the process. So back to not having a lot of public school experience, that was a red flag for me.
That was exactly my note, big firm, private schools,
Yes.
professional, private schools.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to be focused. I don't wanna be training someone on requirements for special ed space in a school and where it can be and all, we
Yeah.
need to know they know that.
Yeah.
So we can focus on the best design for Concord Middle School, not backtracking to basic
Absolutely.
public school regulations.
Or that they even have to submit to the DES.
Any of it, I think we don't wanna be
Yeah,
coaching
I
them.
Agreed.
tend to agree with that. And one thing I wondered with some of those firms is much as we want to know about the whole team, got to get a sense of, well, if we don't have it in the hierarchy, one of those subs will fill in that blank for us, which always gives me pause, like, well, you don't know about this, but I'll grab somebody who does. And there's
You
no-
mean the overall consultant team?
Yeah, overall consultant, but sometimes if you're kind of light on the direct experience in designing, you of course look at all the other various other educational experts who can help with that. And, you know, it's not that you can't get it, but to Lori's point,
It's gonna
Direct
be a
experience.
time issue, for sure.
Some of the things that concern me about the firms that don't have a lot of school experience is that what they're lacking is on the architect's shoulders, not on a consultant's.
Right.
So I would feel differently if they had someone that was like, we can do the schedule for you, we understand the process, that's not it, that's their job, and that's concerning, so.
Yeah, I'm currently working on a project that, did the base building, we're doing the tenant fit out, and, we inherit the building that's a lot of issue. And, the client really had a hard time dealing with that, so that's what I'm sharing.
They do a lot of developer work, which is very different than, especially chapter 149, where you literally have to draw every piece of wood that you want in your project, every piece of blocking, right? It's very different. So, yeah.
Do we have any case to be made to keep this on the list at present, or can we leave this number 3 behind for the present time?
I don't feel strongly enough to go back.
Yeah, I'm comfortable leaving it behind, but we'll defer to others.
So I'm just getting general consensus now. We can tighten things up later in the decision. Okay. Any other considerations or perspectives you want to put forward about firms?
So I said a minute ago, I might tell you a little bit about our experience, and maybe I'm thinking it through. Maybe as we get to them, I'll do that. The
Yeah,
one thing
yeah.
I'll say is, I think I'd rather not, color.
I was concerned about the
Yeah.
front loading.
Yeah, so,
exactly.
but let me say this, what I'm gonna try and do on a lot of these is, the things I'm looking at, some of the firms in general, I'll say focused in on 149A versus 149 or 149A. We haven't had that discussion. I wanna leave that opportunity for the committee to discuss, so that might be a check minus for me, if you will. I'm gonna talk about how many projects the project manager has, how many projects the company has overall. Do they have too many? Do they not have enough? I'm gonna talk about their schedule and that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna bring up questions. I just wanna make it clear, just because I'm asking a question doesn't mean I don't like it or it's a problem. It's just something, I'm gonna try and ask those similar questions on a lot. So,
Just through a different lens as it relates to design bid build or chapter 149 delivery method versus construction manager at risk delivery method. I picked up on that too, that some of the firms were writing really a lot about CMAR. But after I read a couple, it was kind of upsetting me because I was like, what about design bid build? All these projects are coming in under budget right now with that delivery method. I think I understand why they did it. So people know, and so if it's an issue or you made a note that they only spoke to that, I think it's because we asked for a little faster schedule. And I think everyone assumed, so just so everyone knows, I figured it out, like after a couple, I was like, why are they all, and then I was like, why would they? And I think that's why. So understand that if they've got projects in there that are design bid build, chapter 149, I would feel comfortable they can deliver the project with that delivery method. But maybe they focus their write-up on saying, hey, the way we can get you to this building quicker would be to not change the design schedule, but maybe the construction. And that's how you do it. You do early bid packages, et cetera, and that's only able to be done under 149A.
And I would agree with that. I think some of them did better with their schedule than others. Some of them provided, the standard schedule and the early schedule. A couple even said the standard, the middle, and the early. And I would say in general, the middle and the early schedule, both were, literally were CMR. Like the standard could be either, I think. But to get to the earlier the earlier finish dates, they were leaning towards the CMR. There was one that had CMR even on the standard schedule, And when we get to that one, I'll bring it up, but I think you're right, that everybody else had it, it seemed like,
Yeah, and just so you know, we don't have to make that decision until closer to the partway through SD. So
Correct.
we don't need to decide that as it relates to this. We just want to hire someone who is capable of doing either to leave our options open. That's all we need to decide today.
Mhm.
Like that decision is going to be made in months from now. Okay.
Okay, so I think we should simply proceed through our list numerically for a simple process here and speak to assets, speak to questions, speak to deficiencies as we perceive them. Hearing no objection, let's take a look at number 2. Does somebody want to open up conversation on this applicant, this proposal? I will share that they're in my middle bucket.
They are in my middle, that's it.
They were on the low end of my upper bucket, if you will. There were a couple that were teetering, and so I guess you could say like somewhere between my middle and upper, but
Am I correct, they look pretty credible around sustainability?
I had good sustainability remarks, but, coming out of the document, but it's a little bit hard to tell what exactly they were doing on some of these projects. I liked all the King Open stuff. I have a lot of marks here, but I tend to think I have it on a little bit on the low side of the high bucket, but I consider it to be a good piece of work.
just so you know, as it relates to designer demonstrates knowledge of public middle school projects, they don't have any standalone middle schools. King Open has a 6 to 8 within it, and they only have 1 or 2 total MSBA. So just for perspective, they don't have like a traditional 6 to 8 or 5 to 8 or any, like a traditional middle school. They have a middle school within King Open. That's how Cambridge operates. They basically go preschool to 8 in their schools.
Right.
So food for thought on that one. Just.
But well-grounded, I think, in the sustainability stuff in terms of competencies, and the proposals was quite sensitive to all of that stuff, so.
Yeah.
Again, an answer to the sustainability question.
Yeah, I think I gave them 12 out of 15 on sustain, just because I was like,
Yeah.
well, they talked a lot about it, they understood that it was important to us, but like they didn't provide a schedule.
I also gave them 12 out of 15. How's that?
Well, look at
This
that.
is- But I confess I was probably a little tougher on what I got out of their understanding of the project. So I tend to put them on the lower end of things.
Okay, so they're in our middle range. I don't know how we want to.
Yeah, I was really drawn because they're working with a couple of districts that I know fairly well, they're local to us in similar demographics.
Active,
Acton
Yeah.
and Harvard both, so that was intriguing to me, but I saw your points of, they're both elementary projects and there isn't a standalone middle school, so.
And just
I
as
have
a
the same
sidebar commentary, those are their first 2 middle MSBA projects.
Yeah.
And I know they struggled in Harvard with some of the deliverables based on articles I read. So just because, we keep up on what's going on in the world, just food for thought. I don't think that's not something that couldn't be overcome, and by
Sure.
this, that would be, we were asking them to sort of follow that process without the rigidity of it and all the board meetings and everything, but just, those are the first 2, so I assume that there's a learning curve.
Sure.
Turn it over to you then, Mike, on this one, anything?
Sure, the comments I would have on this one is we are actually working not only with this applicant, but actually with their team on a project down the road in Newton. And the project manager I have on that said, as long as the team had the time to put in, she gives them very good marks. She thought they've been very good with being responsive, and she said if she had another project to do and they were on it, she'd be very happy to see them on it. So That's good. I think the notes I had,
Is that a school project?
it's a school project, yeah. There's a pre-K element to it, and then it's an elementary school.
Okay.
It is not an SBA project. I think it's similar to what you're going through here. Newton has had several SBA projects, and they have,
Yes.
they're continuing their process without the
Yeah,
SBA.
I did a non-MSBA elementary school.
Yeah, so, looking at their team, I think they have a strong team. Looking at their project list, they have a few larger projects, not a lot of larger projects, that's what I noted. The PM is currently only on one project, and that's the project they're on with us.
Mhm.
And, there's maybe a little bit of a continuity there, so that's always a positive. The project architect is on 2 projects, both in construction. So I think, if you remember, we talked about this a while back, I think Don mentioned ideally, a project architect or a project manager should be probably not on more than 2 or 3 projects, but and ideally you want kind of one at the beginning, one in the middle, and one towards the end, and so their architect has one in construction right now and no other one right now, so.
Are you talking about the right firm?
I think so.
Number 2?
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm only asking because number 4 is working on a non-MSBA school in Newton, and that's the only one I know of.
Yeah, no, we're definitely.
There's another one?
Definitely, yeah, absolutely.
And it's following all the same, okay. All right.
All right, I wish
I didn't know they had
this was a
2
more,
happening.
I wish this was a more exact science, but it's not.
It's not, no.
Might I hear an argument for keeping number 2 in the lower end of our first ranking for the present time, or in the upper side of the second bucket? Because that's how, the third bucket is the one that we're dropping for now.
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
what we're trying to get to.
Yeah,
De facto.
Mhm.
sure.
If you had a forced choice, where would you put them right now?
I think I need to hear what others think about the other firms before I
Okay.
can make that decision.
Then let's
Keep them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say
Keep
if nobody feels super strongly about them, then maybe they're bucket number 2 for now.
Yeah,
Wouldn't be
And
bad
we
to
can see how
hold them
many.
though and come back to them. later
Right,
in
I
the
think that's what
process.
bucket
Yeah.
2 is
Yeah.
that,
Hold them as top bucket and then come back.
2 with a hold, everybody understands? Comfortable with that
Yep.
interpretation?
I mean, for me, just quickly from a sustainability perspective, so we put Passive House in the RFS. There were only 2 firms in my mind that really latched on to that,
Mhm.
maybe 3.
Right.
Mhm.
And this was not one of them,
Right.
so.
Okay. We'll move on to number 3.
I think 3 we
Three
have.
we-
Forgive me, we've
That's
done
okay.
that.
So I think what I'm hearing, Core, right now is we're gonna try and do a quick review of each and kind of put them in the 1, 2, or 3, and then maybe we go back and focus on the ones and score the ones, and if we need to go into the 2, we
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I like that strategy.
can kind of spend maybe 3 to 5 minutes on each one and just kind of.
Is that working for
Get the
everybody,
cost.
what we've been doing?
Yep.
All right. So we'll turn to number 4.
I'm gonna make piles over here.
No,
I
it's-
didn't want you to roll over them.
I'll open up with, this group is in my middle bucket. Doesn't make it easy.
I second your middle bucket. They were in the higher end of my middle bucket. But
Okay.
they were solidly in my middle bucket.
And I agree with that.
Any strengths, any demerits, any questions or concerns that people could speak to?
Well, I guess they did Hastings, one of our neighbors, Lincoln.
Dewey.
Lexington, but
Yeah, I had an unsolicited email from the superintendent in Lexington saying how pleased they've been. I have this other little bias that I'm trying to, because those who came to the walkthrough chatted with me while they were there.
course
So
they
now
did.
I've got some I've had personal connection with and others that I haven't, so I'm vetting that a little bit too. I don't even know where that plays in.
I thought they
It's
had a little bit of a.
It is
Take it along,
important,
but yeah,
yeah,
I always
yeah.
try to talk to the
Yeah.
superintendent,
Yeah,
principal,
no,
ask
I-
questions, like make an impression.
FaceTime, FaceTime matters.
Totally.
Well, it speaks to the fact that we are dealing with limited knowledge and we've got to make a big
Yeah.
decision with
Yeah.
everything we have that is legitimate.
Mhm.
Maybe I went easy, I might have been a sophomore, when I had it in the upper bucket, not in the middle bucket, but
I was more on that side, Chris, too, and I'm still processing what drove that exactly between the unsolicited positive I got and then some FaceTime, and then I had this to work with too, so.
They were in my upper.
Ah,
I think they're certainly qualified. Although they got high points because there are a couple things that they did. They followed our criteria to a
Yes, they
T.
did.
Exactly, and I was gonna say.
Scoring them was so easy, because it was like, I mean, for good or for bad, like they took our score sheet and were like, okay, we're gonna address everything.
And I'm sort of
And that tells
surprised
me
how many
something.
firms did not take the time to make it a little bit easier
Yeah.
for us
Yeah.
to go through these criteria.
Yeah.
And say, yeah, this is the experience level I think you have in this group. Because a lot of the review and re-review was sort of hunting around, where am I gonna find this in your
Right,
presentation? And, you know, maybe the cynic and any of us might say, oh yeah, you followed the score sheet, you can maybe hide some deficiencies, but all in all, I'm with you, though, that put them in the higher range.
Yeah, I sort of have mixed feelings on that, because as someone that writes these, it's very boring to write something based on like following the criteria. I never do that.
Change it.
But on the other side of it, I was appreciative that they did.
yeah.
So I'm, yeah, so I'm like, oh, interesting, like I've never written it like that, but as someone who's evaluating 14 of them, it made scoring it very easy. It was like, did they have it or not, did they demonstrate it or not, it made it. So for me, as a evaluator, I made a note that they followed it to a T, and they specifically addressed our asks and our concerns.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which
Yeah.
so that tells me something about the team, that they listen, and that they are, understanding what's important to us. So, I don't know, that, a lot of my notes say, provided, demonstrated, specifically addressed, like those were my comments. Entire page dedicated to this topic. I gave them 9 out of 10 on that. That was demonstrating experience in designing to the budget and managing the design through value engineering, value management. Like some people did that better than others. These guys dedicated an entire page, which that's,
Right.
that tells me that that's important. And they understand that that's important to us, right? Because it very much is.
Yep.
So, I don't know. Did they wow me? I think their designs are good. I think they are competent. I think they're capable. I think they can do the things we're gonna ask them to do and listen along the way. So they
They're
were
clearly in one of the top 2 buckets and
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
not
So,
dropping out.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we are in the same place again then, but we're gonna hear from Mike first. Maybe that'll push us.
So I'll maybe start by asking Andy to maybe give a little bit of history on this, because Andy's actually.
Mike,
Oh, that's
worked
right,
with them.
because I actually called them for a reference on Yearly, and I forgot about that back in the day.
I worked with them on 2 projects in Lexington, actually, let's say 3, the Estabrook, Clark and Diamond Middle School. I think they're great, and Ken Danisco was involved, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say. The principal was involved, and I think he's in retirement right now. I'm fine working with them, and my only concern is the project manager that listed here is not a mass register, listed right now, but it's not applicable as an architect. But I think the firm is great.
Yeah, I mean, they've been doing schools a long time, so.
So the couple of.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Actually, I just realized one. So they did list their MEP. I went to their MEP's website because I was not familiar with their MEP, and the website was under construction, which was unfortunate. So it meant that we couldn't really find out more about their MEP, because that's. I mean, it's
I use them.
interesting.
Occasionally, for certain things. They get used a lot, they're MBE,
Okay.
minority business.
Right.
And they, yeah.
What was your,
I have never tried to use them for mechanical or electrical. I usually use them fire protection and plumbing. And they're okay. So can I speak to the systems that they design around, being net zero energy, or I don't have any experience on that.
Right, and I wasn't able to really get further insight into that.
Interesting. Is that the same, do you know their team on Hastings? Is that the same engineer,
It's the same,
MEP?
yeah.
Basics was net zero.
It is.
Yep.
Basics was,
Yeah,
Yes,
so
this-
that's my point, is if they can do something there, that's,
Mhm.
yeah, I
my
don't know.
sense was they got
I-
pushed on it though, I'm not sure. I mean, I'd like to hear what Matt has to say about the sustainability stuff on these guys.
Well, that one I had trouble tracking down. I mean, my notes on their write-up in here was that it was adequate. I wasn't overly impressed, but it was kind of middle of the pack for me from a sustainability perspective.
That's what I had too,
Yeah, yeah.
middle,
So,
On
and so I
sustainability.
wanted to look more into their MEP to just get an understanding of, because there is, there's one firm that really dominates the list here, and
GGD.
right, that's not them here, so,
Oh, I shouldn't have said that.
So,
well, they,
I don't know.
They're across the board on a lot of them.
yeah, they are,
Yeah.
we use them all the time. Yeah, interesting, and I wonder if they even need the firm itself is WBE, so from a percentage standpoint, I don't,
Typically, even if they're a WBE, there's
They
still
still
an
have to-
attempt to try and get the
MB.
subcontractors to be,
Yeah.
to be in there. In general, I'll say I had some, I'll just give you my notes. They're the only team that I found changing the PM from the study phase to the design phase.
that's a good point, yeah.
I've talked with people in my company as well as Andy, and my understanding is that their initial PM is very good at the study phase, and that's why that person is in that position. And although that person isn't a registered architect, so when it gets into the design, they want a registered architect leading the team, I think.
Okay.
So, take it as a positive, take it as a negative.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
You know.
That's a good point, I didn't even know,
Yeah,
I didn't even
so,
see that, yeah.
They have several projects of similar size, which I thought was very good. Right now, they have 5 current projects, and it's not a huge firm. 4 of those are school projects, and I had 90 million, 50 million, 67 million, and 53 million. That's construction value. So add another 30% to get the total. So all, I'll say, in the range of our projects. And their second PM is on 2 of those already, which a little bit of a red flag.
And they also list that person as the spec consultant, the auditorium consultant, and the
Exactly.
library consultant, which to me that's not a PM's job.
Yeah.
They should be, reviewing the spec, but never in my world has my project manager written the spec on a $100 million project.
Well, and I was struck that person's also the educational consultant,
Mhm.
They do their own, yeah, which I thought was
Quandary.
interesting.
a little bit
Yeah.
too.
Yep.
So,
I did notice that.
Yeah.
so that maybe there's 3 or 4 jobs there on this one job. So,
Okay.
the understanding, when you get into section 10, which is project understanding, I know everybody else seemed to think that it was very custom to our job, but there was a thing in the bottom that said updated July 2016 on all the pages.
That's the designer form.
But it seemed like there was the word Concord Public School where needed and stuff, but it was a little bit, like you said, it's a form.
It's a form
Yeah.
thing, because I've commented on ours before, and
And then they were the ones that, they had a section
What's this?
showing their change order values.
Oh.
And some of them were a little high, I thought, like I was like, if that was me, I would have shown those values. Like,
yeah.
it wasn't asked for specifically, I mean, then they were trying to address the value management maybe, but, and then the final thing was, I think that they were the ones that, even on their base schedule, they specifically called out that it would be CFR.
Mhm.
So,
Okay. Those are great
but,
points.
in general, we've worked with them before, like Andy mentioned, one of their principals has retired. But we've worked with them before, and we'd be happy to see them again.
So we know this is a forced choice process here, it doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it easy to apply uniform standards through a long 14 review. We're going to struggle to do that as well. Am I hearing a suggestion that we put this in our 2 bucket or our 1 bucket? We started with, it's in the 2 or very bottom of 1. I'm not sure that's changed fundamentally in this conversation. But we do have to do this sort of process.
I would put them in the same bucket as applicant too, in that I haven't necessarily
Yeah.
said no, but I wanna hear like excitement about some other firms maybe, and then understand how they relate based on that.
Hold them, come back.
Yeah, so that's like
Chris, Lori, comfortable?
it's like a
Yeah.
2A.
Asterisk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2 with an
we-
asterisk.
Two makes good
Alright.
sense to me.
So they're gonna come back for the next round and try it.
Well, we're gonna see if any of
Basketball.
the,
We're not
those
gonna send
guys
you home
rise.
Yeah,
That's
made
not how
the,
that-
made the next round.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're on number 5, folks.
Yes.
Anybody want to open up? So
I'm gonna stay quiet.
Okay.
I found these folks to be in my top tier, but the bottommost candidate. What else could I put up? We didn't, I thought their scheduling was more than acceptable.
My comment on schedule was good schedule with reality of what they believed it would take to actually adjust the phases, which is what I would expect out of a competent firm.
One thing that stood out to me, they designed the Gates Middle School in Situate, which I
Relevant.
personally think very highly of. So that was a
And I
positive.
think it's the same team, I guess I don't fully know that team, but I know a couple, like I know the principal was on it and the educational planner within their firm.
And I know now that we've been there
Both worked on it.
twice, they're very positive about their experience, so.
Yeah, they were in my hire, are you finished?
I'm finished, for now, yes,
Yeah.
please.
What I liked most about them was that I wrote overall great proposal focused on us, Concord.
Yeah.
Like they weren't like, we're awesome, we're great. They demonstrated their experience through project solutions, which I thought was, as someone who, like they're saying, here are your issues, here's how we've solved those same issues on relevant projects,
Yeah.
which for me says, okay, they can take what we're trying to do and solve it. They've done it before, and even if it's something unique, they are capable of solving our solutions and that solving our problems. And I wrote great cover letter. As it relates to sustainability, I said it was a good write-up, but no net zero examples, nor passive house.
Yeah, the sustainability stuff didn't stick out much.
Well, see, here's where the reality of public school work, and there will be some standouts on that, but in general, a lot of the firms are trying to get to a better place with that, and so.
Because the question is whether they have the core skills to do what we want them to do in that area.
Mhm.
Are they gonna be able to figure it out?
Yeah, well, I understood, I have to look back on their consultant team. I understood from their write-up, they were excited to help us do that, do you know what I mean?
Yes,
So
yes.
for me, I want a firm that's, not just saying, hey, yeah, I can help you get there, but hey, I wanna get there with you and help you along the way, so I kinda got that feeling from it, but others could
Yeah, I
agree or
would
disagree.
agree with that feeling, John. I think that there were from my perspective, there were other firms who put the pieces together better. I mean, for me, they were a solid middle bucket. So,
And food for thought, it looks like their project manager hasn't been there very long and was previously with a firm that did a lot of Concord work. Did anyone else see that?
I did. Yes.
So I don't know, I wasn't here for any other projects.
And they had an APM that's done several projects.
Okay. I don't know if that's a plus or a minus, I just noticed it, cause I don't know the person, nor do I know the projects, so.
So maybe what I saw here is, first up, we have worked with this company again. The project that we did work with them on, it was a few years ago. The principal was involved and the project architect was involved, and our team was very happy with them. what I'm looking at right now, they actually provided 2 options on the schedule, which I thought was good from my perspective. I'm very much about the schedule right now, is one of the things that I look at.
Yes,
And I was appreciative that they looked at, both options, and I think we talked before on whether they have the numbers exactly right or not. The fact that they made the effort is the important part there, and I think they made that effort. Looking at their company workload, it looks like they have 8 projects, including 4 MSBA projects right now, so that's a reasonably heavy load. The project manager is on 2 projects right now, one's in feasibility, one's in construction, so it's kind of what Don had talked about in that ideal, that you have one start and one. Maybe the feasibility would be better if it was DD, but it's pretty good. I didn't see a lot of larger projects on there, but I did see a lot of relevant projects on there. Just maybe, again, it's not, it's hard to find that, 1 or 2 projects that check every single box that matches our project exactly.
Mike, can I ask a question that is more technical? There's one subcontractor, and I don't even want to say which one, that I don't believe is a fit here. Is that up for discussion?
Yes.
Does it eliminate
Yes,
everything?
please.
No.
It can be a point
You could
down the road?
contractually, you can, before you sign a contract, you
Okay.
can have that conversation
Thank
with
you.
them. Because the reality of these are, you pick your team, and the bigger consultants you reach out to, whether they're participating in the proposal or not, sometimes you just carry them, and then you negotiate after you get your
Okay.
one. So
Okay.
the short answer is yes. But
Charlie, other comments? Matt?
I mean, I can balance that a little to say one of the other subcontractors works with us on a lot of different things and has a great amount of familiarity with Concord, and it's been very positive, so I can balance those, so.
one other point about this firm, I happen to know how they operate. The principal is not some guy you're gonna see at the beginning and the end. They come to every single meeting. They almost serve as a second project manager, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
They are very, and I know this gentleman, professionally, and super, super hands-on and very involved. So he's not just like high level, like gonna, reach out to here and there. Like they are involved, and that's their mantra about how they run their company, is that they only have a couple principals, and they stay involved. They go to pretty much every meeting.
But they still want the project manager to be a project manager.
Yep. So the project manager is like nuts and bolts. The principal is, sort of a little piece in design, a little piece in managing, is keeping relationships going, and yeah. So
they know how to do it that way.
that's my take. I mean, you guys have worked with them, yeah? Is that?
We've worked with them on a couple of projects.
Yeah.
We hadn't worked with them a ton, but the one that I really got a good amount of feedback was in Webster, and our team was happy with them.
All right, so once again, we're in the box. Would anybody want to suggest a 2 hold or a 1 at this point?
Just for what it's worth,
yes,
they were tied for one of the highest scores for me.
They were-
As an
they were-
overall architect with addressing our concerns,
They were also my upper bucket.
Am I hearing a 1 for the present time? Any contrary voices?
It's for the moment, yeah.
For the moment, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, exactly, this thing remains
Yeah.
fluid. Because what we're gonna do when we have a particular tier within which to work, sorted out of these 14, is we're gonna start, in a sense, all over again.
Yes, agreed.
In a sense. Sorry to break the news, yeah. Okay, so with that, I'll turn to
11:30 train.
I'll turn
That's what most of us
to
target.
number 6 and say that, because I think it's left to me to open sometimes, knowing that wiser voices will weigh in shortly. With some potential bias here, this was in my high end of my number 1 bucket.
I mean, we know this firm very well and I worked closely with them.
And that's the bias,
we-
yeah.
We can testify to positive things about the middle school sites and their feedback to us, so again, I'm stuck with like, okay, does that mean I know what they're gonna do going forward? We've already gotten a hint of where they would go with design.
Can I speak to the design quickly?
Yeah, of course.
They had designs in the feasibility that they've already done. And as a designer, I had questions about them.
Yeah.
They revisited one of them in their proposal, if anyone noticed
Yes, I
that.
did notice that.
And from a sustainability point, they teamed with another firm, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But then their revisit of the option either had only single-loaded corridors or windowless classrooms. And as a designer, I'm like, I can't even go there. Like, that doesn't even make sense to me. So
So that's interesting.
they had an opportunity to revisit it, and don't get me wrong, they scored high in my, but as a designer, I'm looking at the revisit saying, God, they had an opportunity to like correct some of the things I questioned earlier, and they didn't do it. And they have another firm now that they could, so they did other things that were nice about it, but when you simply look at the diagram, and I wrote, not a great diagram, because it made me question, is this a single loaded corridor, or are there classrooms that don't have windows? I don't know. So either the diagram was unclear, or there's like, it's not worked out totally. So if it's not worked out, I guess why propose it?
Well, and that's much more detailed than I can pick up. Thank you.
Come on.
That's what you're an architect, I'm not. But
This is the risk in providing diagrams, by the way.
yeah, but the larger point is kind of the theme of once a proposer has a preconceived idea, does that person get kind of in a box?
Yeah.
And that was my only concern, okay, you've given some thought to this and, a little bit more thought, but is this gonna be driving things all throughout the process? And at some point, if the entire committee and all the experts are pushing back saying, no, you really gotta rethink that box you draw. That's always my concern. And
Yeah.
Creativity's tough, but once you say, well, I really like this, you're always coming back to the line you drew. And at some point, you folks will look and say, well, just to that detail, wait a minute. There's another way to do it.
I think it can be overcome
Yeah.
with critique and conversation. Like, this isn't like something that I think is a disqualifier by any,
Right.
and everything's subjective when it comes to design.
Mhm.
But as a designer, I'm looking for, put the building in the right place. Like, orient the classrooms north and south, control the natural daylight. Like, these are basics. These are like siting basics, which is really what a diagram in a proposal is.
Yeah.
So I don't know, for me, that was something that I'm like, oh, well, it can be overcome, but it's something I picked up on, so I don't know.
My reaction to that, Chris, would be like their receptiveness to changing what they've put in their proposal can be discussed during the interview.
Right.
And then we can get a better
Right.
feel for how open they are to changing it. I guess I like.
So you're already interviewing them,
Well, no, I mean,
which is fine, they scored high, don't get me wrong, I'm
yeah.
like,
I like that they put it in there
Mhm.
because I
Oh,
think
yeah.
it's easier for us to react to something and say we don't like it than to not have anything. And it shows that they put a
Exactly. I
little
agree with
time, more time into their RFS than other firms who
Yeah.
didn't
Right.
give us.
And to be fair, of course, part of that can be offset by the variety in their other projects. That would demonstrate that they're not, the old
Right.
builders thing. I have 3 designs, pick one of 3.
Right.
They're gonna be the same throughout.
Right.
Which, if they've got a variety, it says, yes, they can think out of whatever box they can.
Yep.
I can speak a little to them personally, since we have worked with them, and boy, we've asked a few things of them that had them spinning over and over back again, and they did that very willingly and with a lot of reception. I also want to just be sure we qualify that the knowledge base they have so far and the design work they've done is done without any input from anybody other than what they got in the RFS. And I think they went pretty far out on the limb, and they actually put a design out in this community as part of the other work they did, which is kind of bold too. So
Right.
I think they're really trying to help show us they would meet our needs. I just don't know if they've had the opportunity for that feedback at another level. So I'm not sure that in my
Again.
top ones, I'm just saying we've had a lot of positives
Yep.
with them.
I don't know if anybody mentioned the Passive House.
Yeah, this is one of the two
Yeah,
firms
we've
that
got-
went out and.
Right, went out and they've
Yeah.
got some discussion there, some competency, they've done some stuff.
Yeah, I did high points for that.
Yeah. I agree that was great on their end to provide that experience. As a designer, we have teamed with other architects and I can tell you it's muddy water.
Mhm.
So just be forewarned.
What's muddy water, the proposal or?
No, the
be clear,
process.
the pre-
Like
yeah.
what it, so I'm totally, again, these guys scored high for
I
me,
mean, what
but
is
I'm
that
just telling
versus
you my
what is somebody
experience.
else?
When you have an associate architect,
Yeah.
another, not
I
a
understand.
consultant, a consultant's very different, the lines are clear, what their job is and what your job is. When you have two architectural firms, and there are a couple proposals from teams, if you will, two architectural firms, I'm gonna ask the question if we get to an interview, what are your clear roles? Who is doing what? Who is drawing what? Who's managing
Yeah.
what? It becomes, and I have an example in my firm, it's not my project, but I'm watching this happen. And it was really clear that we hired someone specifically for their unique experience, and it's still muddy. So just be forewarned, I'm not saying it's a negative. I think it's very much a positive in that they're trying to supplement something that they don't have with another firm, but we wanna be really clear what that other firm's doing and why.
Is it fairly common with Passive House to partner?
I have
with
never
bigger
done a
firms?
passive house project.
Well,
I
like
don't
the
know.
Stephen Winter stuff, it seems like that's not necessarily an in-house, common in-house set of capabilities. I don't know, it seems to be
Right.
fairly specialized.
I would think it is,
Yeah.
If you've done a project like that, good.
I don't think
But
many
you
have.
probably have to do.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
I don't believe many people have, especially on public jobs.
So you're gonna bring a partner in? Okay.
But are they calling them teaming here? I mean, the way it's been, I guess, to me it seemed, and it, maybe I'm also just reflecting on the spreadsheet here, but that the second firm was placed as their sustainability consultant. I mean, I entirely agree with what Don said about when you get multiple designers, it can get muddy. But to that response, I would also say, I think we're trying to do something a little more advanced, and maybe there isn't a firm out there that can do it all. And so
Yep.
I like that there have been some teaming efforts. I think I'd also say that our goal today is just to get to the interview, and those are great questions
It's
that we would want to work out in the interview with, to find out, can they really work it out together and play nice, or is it gonna be messy? Because I entirely agree with Don, I've seen those projects where it gets
Yeah.
messy.
It's possible I have them confused, so let me back step for a minute and just
So
make sure.
Brightburn is listed as the sub.
Sub-consultant,
Yeah,
okay, so that makes me
It'll
feel
say
better.
on the spreadsheet here.
There were
Yeah,
a few
is that okay for me
teams,
to
which
say
that's
that?
my concern about
There
teams,
were
so
teams.
I'm sorry, I stand corrected.
Yeah, so I think in
And
this
I'm
case-
totally fine with a sustainability consultant that has the knowledge and criteria.
I guess
that
I
we-
saw this one,
Yep.
and I don't, I
Okay,
guess I
yeah,
just
I
wanna make
was
sure we're on
wrong,
the
yeah, I
same
thought
page
it
for
was a
this one.
team of an
But it
architecture
seemed
firm
like-
and,
Right, it is interesting that the consultant is an architect and not like a
yeah, so
traditional
I think
consultant.
that's how I read it.
So
Yep.
but I think
That's
that
good and
that
bad.
shows sensitivity
Yeah.
to what we asked for in the RFS.
Agreed,
So-
so that's a good thing then, alright. But I did make a note, one thing. I said that the PM only has one or two schools on there, so, hold on a second,
So
did
that
you
might
pick
be,
up on that
that
too? I
might be
know
a
that's something
segue,
you,
Yeah.
might be a segue
So-
for Mike.
okay,
You can jump in as I fill in here. So what I looked at is I thought you had potential ability to jump into the SD a little bit faster if that schedule is a priority. I don't know if Hill in the recent past has worked with this company. I'll say we haven't worked in the recent past, but I have a person in my company that has been with us for about 6 months now, and she actually not only worked with this company, but with this project manager on her last project, and couldn't speak highly enough about her. Said she was great, and really spoke highly of her. That's the good part of it. The bad part of it, I guess, is they list her on 4 projects right now. So this would be a fifth project for the project manager. I don't know how involved she is in the other four, but that, if you were to get into an interview position, that would definitely be one question you would have. Project architect is only on one project, that's really good. And then, again, they were one of the teams that actually provided the 2 schedule options, which, again, I think was listening to our questions and answering the questions, so I thought.
So the project manager is the junior person there, right?
No, the project manager is the senior person.
Okay, because they're calling it the principal in charge.
So you have the principal, and kind of like with our team,
Yep,
we have the principal who's not here at the table.
yep,
I'm the executive, the project manager, the assistant project manager, so the principal is one step
Right.
removed. Typically, the PM is gonna be the person that will be, I'll say my equivalent, project architect would be Andy's equivalent, and then you have assistant project managers, you have technical directors, there's lots of other titles in there, but it's, the primary team is the project manager lead with the project architect. The way I kind of usually suggested, and Don correct, is the project manager is the team leader, but the architect is the lead designer.
Unless they list a designer, and in this case they do, they have a director of design.
yeah.
So I always do-
Boston,
It's funny because it depends on the
Titles.
project.
Yeah.
Like I always trip up because technically I'm a designer, but I'm also a project manager, a project architect. So whenever I introduce myself on Teams, I'm like, okay, what, like, I straddle that. So it is a little muddy, and when there's a designer or a director of design
Right.
listed, I presume they're overseeing the design, and the project architect's like nuts and bolts, maybe managing the team and making sure the drawings are coming together. That's how I differentiate that,
When
so,
we get into CA, then they're gonna be leading the CA and.
Yeah. so,
Construction administration.
So, who's the one who's on multiple projects, Mike? Is it
Project
The
manager.
PM,
The PM, this one.
on 4
Which-
already,
Laura?
you say?
I shouldn't say that either, right? Sorry.
You're breaking all the rules here, Charlie. Okay.
Yeah, just it lists, if you look on the resume section under each person,
G.
section G, current work assignments, it
Got it.
lists 4 different ones.
Yeah.
Now, with those ones, some of them might be just, kind of keeping tabs on a project.
I was gonna say, they didn't necessarily jump out as huge projects necessarily, but it's hard to be sure.
It depends, some of the people, different firms do different things. Sometimes they said they were on this project 10%, they're on this project 25%, they get 30% availability, 50%. They didn't tell us that here, so I can't discern it, but, so
And
it's just
those are
something.
tough numbers anyway for them to generate.
Yeah.
And I was saying, I know some of these buildings, and I'm sort of wondering, okay, if those buildings have undergone a lot of work, what is that person doing on those particular buildings now? Maybe.
They could be in closeout, they could be.
So,
Right.
so what I'm hearing is, were they to be interviewed, these are
We have some questions.
areas for very close, challenging scrutiny. Do we have a sense that this would remain in our top bucket for the present time?
I think so.
All right, and my notes indicate we did that with the previous one, am I right?
Correct.
Okay.
So 5 and 6 are both.
So I'll note that we've been at this for about an hour and a quarter. Our hoped for 10:30 is going to be a challenge, but we're going to stay strong right through the process. We're moving on to number 7, and I would offer up that this organization did not come into my top tier. In fact, somewhere in the middle of the middle. Do we have any strengths, any real merits or demerits to point out, or unknowns or questions?
As a reminder, they were the ones with the missing forms that Mike had to follow up on,
Oh,
just so
right.
folks.
This was the,
So we talked a little bit
I thought we had this one on hold, come back and on hold.
We did. Because of the farms.
So,
All right.
on this one here, I'll just give we worked with this team a couple of times. I think it's a real solid team. I enjoyed working with the team, I'd like to see it again. The one thing I will say, that the projects I worked on with them were not school projects. So,
But
good
they
and
have,
bad.
but they have school
They
experience.
definitely have school
They-
experience, they have a lot of sustainability experience. I I didn't see a lot of big jobs. I saw a lot of school experience, you know, and again, analogous in some ways, not in others, and
Yeah.
certainly,
They've done big projects.
Yeah,
They
they've
did
done-
Lawrence High School when I worked there. I mean, these are like, that's a big
deal.
project.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure that's so old and not relevant that it wasn't listed, but they definitely, at least in the past, have done big projects.
the other thing I noticed is they've got some repeat clients.
Mhm.
And I'll say from my perspective, that makes me feel good when I have a repeat client.
Sure.
That means not only did I do good on the last one, but good enough that they want me to come back and do the next one, so.
They've been battle tested, yeah.
They were a top bucket for me, but I did have the concern that there were multiple instances that mistakes that they had in their first deliverable to us.
I'm currently working with them right now, and the principal is very involved in the project, very responsive. We come up with some challenges, which is typical in our project, and he's very responsive and, you know, try to solve the problem very professionally. Make it work.
Funny, this came across to me as kind of a bit of a wild card. The sustainability stuff looked really good. Passive house, living building challenge. A lot of interesting stuff. Also, the experience was a little bit good, but different. Different kind of take.
All over
And
the
you
world.
could get, pardon me?
They,
All over the world.
yeah,
Yeah, well, that was, I consider that to be a strength, because gee, get somebody in here that is, you know, gonna do something and maybe a little different, maybe that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
So I had this a little bit as a wild card, you know, I liked a lot of the stuff in here. I liked the thinking out, the visioning stuff, I like that. I thought it seemed like they put a lot of thought into it, and you could get an interesting outcome if they, you know, were able to pull it off.
can I speak to personal experience? Again, disclaimer, I worked there years ago, like around 2000, so almost 20 years. And worked with a few people on this. The project architect, I don't know this person, they spoke to the fact that they have 4 principals and they do sort of different things. The principal I know that does a lot of their schools is not on the team, which I was surprised to see, because I know him. And that doesn't mean that they're not capable, but to say that and then not include the person that I associate and see everywhere at the MSBA and at other schools, he's not on here on the team, which he may just be busy, and that's fine. And I had one other point. Oh, about the amount, like the variety of work. When Earl Flansburgh passed away, they had a huge change in leadership, and I don't know if anyone knew David Solo, who used to live in Concord.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry. But he ran that firm for a long time. But anyway, sorry to use names. They branched out at that point and started doing these like creative projects outside
Yeah,
of.
that was what I got.
Yeah. So it was like in a change in leadership, they sort of started doing a variety of work, which is really
experimental stuff too.
interesting. Yeah, but they still have stayed with tried and true Massachusetts public schools, but that's not all they do. So for whatever that's worth, it's variety, and it, you know, you can certainly learn something from doing a project in another state or another country that could be relevant to design, right?
Absolutely.
So
Or whatever it's
I'm hearing wild card, but not as a pejorative. And a wild card would suggest to me it's going to require a strong building committee and a strong OPM to bring out the best in any wild card. Is this a group that's going to stay on our short list or not for the present time? Are they going to?
Sounds like they're in the top 2 buckets for sure.
They're at the top
Am I
2.
hearing
Yeah,
that right?
I'm asking us, can we push a choice at this point in our conversation?
You had them at the bottom edge of the top bucket.
I'm comfortable with that. Are others comfortable with that for the present
Yep.
time? All right. Anything else to add? I don't want to foreclose conversation. Mike?
No, I think I kind of got my information in there. I think
Okay.
I wanna keep things moving here.
So we're
I
gonna
think
move
we still-
on to,
We're gonna come back to everybody again.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. We're
The
gonna,
hot bucket is pretty big so far, so,
Well, right now
Well,
we've
the
got
top
three.
list is only three.
It's less than half,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
yeah.
so we're on our number 8 proposal, and I found myself wanting to be more impressed with this than I ultimately was.
I think that's good.
I would agree. Yeah, this was actually bucket number 3 for me.
Okay,
I mean, I think it was a great, it was a slick proposal, it was well put together, but, it didn't come through for me. I also felt like they didn't address sustainability at all.
are they a small outfit relative to everybody else? So I didn't see the need to, take a chance like that, given the content of the proposal. That was what just,
I think I said at the beginning that there was several firms that if the job was a different job, a smaller job maybe, or that I might think of them differently, and I think that was maybe kind of at a high level, my take that if this was a, $25 million construction project, not a $80 million, or $70 million, then I'd think a little differently. But I noted, I had that they're small, and they do have a very large project right now, but it's ongoing right now, so they've already got a large project that they're kind of focusing on. This is one that was kind of leaning towards that 149A, but I think to Don's point, that might be because they're thinking the accelerated schedule.
Trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, that's what,
So, and I questioned the large project experience on the schedule. They talked a little bit about the feasibility and schematic, but that was really it. They didn't get into the rest of it, partial answer, partial credit. And then one of the things I talked with an individual in my office, and they mentioned that they tend to do a lot of stuff that wows people, but it's a lot of custom, which means it adds dollars.
Lori?
I'm not in any way overriding any of what you've all said. One of the current administrators worked with this group in the prior district and had a very, very positive experience, according to him. Maybe because of what you just said, a lot of the customization, I think, was what, and has continued to stay in touch with him since, like it became a real professional, really strong professional relationship. And I know that school has been showcased multiple times over at many levels. I really was intrigued with just the time put in to try to give us design options. There was some level of customization to us, which maybe is the strength. And I'm not saying it undoes the capacity in some of your other comments, but this just felt like there was some effort to show us some of the different, I don't know, maybe because that's what I'm getting anxious to start talking about. I got sucked right into 4 different options right off the top, so.
No, I thought that was really nice.
Yeah.
As it relates to those, I noted on a sustainability point, only one of the 4 options actually has north-south facing.
Yeah, I don't know any of that. I was just looking at
I think they
what
really
it felt
went
like to
up.
see
They
some
really
school
went up on
choices.
sustainability, so
Yeah.
that makes
Understood.
it hard for me.
Understood.
But I agree.
I just wanted to be sure
Those
to
layouts
balance
were really nice.
what positives I knew, so that.
And to that point, I think, like, just like when you look at these things, Charlie and I are saying again and again, sometimes, in the exam, the first choice answer is the right one, and my initial cut was on the lower end. And then I think I got sort of wowed. In my second look, I look at some of these things, I said, well, maybe I'm being a little too harsh on some of these. So I think that kind of comports with where we are.
so what was your net on that then?
The net is still on the lower end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Even if I did a straight average between
Yeah,
the
yeah.
two scores, I'd say.
They were in my, low end of my second bucket, so.
So we can call it a 3, we can call it a 2 without a hole, to stick with our vernacular. Is that where we're at?
I feel like we have to be tough.
Yeah,
We do, because there's so much
So,
14
strength.
proposals.
Yeah, we're in the
I guess I would
gray,
advocate
yeah.
for a 3.
Three it is. Hearing no objection. We always can come back to these if need be. We're gonna move on then to number 9. And I can't offer up much about this other than it was in my middle tier. I don't recall any specific questions I had about Others, if you'd be kind enough to weigh in with merits, demerits, questions.
So,
Mike, hold on a second.
Court and I shared the same scoring, right? I mean, this was middle bucket for me.
Yeah.
This was upper middle bucket. I think I went through a string of ones that I didn't like, and then this one came in, and I was more pleasantly surprised with it than I expected, based on how I started. I like the layout. I enjoyed the structure to their response. So I thought that this was a solid response.
A lot of
Solid
schoolwork.
what?
A solid response.
And what bucket?
I have it as my upper second bucket.
They have done a lot of schoolwork.
Yeah.
No question about that. Other perspectives on this?
Well, I had a lot of marks on this.
Please.
A lot of, items that were picked out, and I had them in upper bucket, but, maybe I'm not all that concerning on some of this stuff, but, there's there seemed to be a lot of, fairly
You're
decent
in the wrong one.
sustainable, what? I'm on the wrong one?
Yeah,
Number 9?
number 9.
Applicant number 9, yeah.
Oh, good, I'm glad you.
Good
Just because I'm looking at your.
Oh, this,
Yes,
wait,
yeah.
is this one here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this one didn't.
Not that I'll bring my.
I'm sorry, I-
That's it, well.
This one didn't go anywhere for me, so,
Okay.
didn't speak.
I like their structural engineering, which I normally don't look at structural engineering.
It's funny you say that. I had the same response. I was like, good for them. I wish I could afford that structural engineer.
Yeah, their structural engineering is great. So,
That's really funny.
I had a very
Yeah.
high.
I had the same response. He's great.
Bye, Julie.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm glad I got on the right foot.
Lori?
And maybe, this is where some of the non-tangibles, I had very high expectations because they're a very well-known, reputable firm. And as I got through it, I was just craving the Concord part. And I struggled with that, and that made me start to feel like, oh, big firm, not really quite honed in on us yet, yeah.
Interesting. I never heard of that.
Yeah, they're
Totally new
wide.
to me.
yeah.
They've done some impressive schoolwork.
I wouldn't deny that at all.
Yeah.
I think that's why my expectations were so high.
Just nothing popped out
Yeah.
that was
Okay.
commentable.
All right, let's,
I don't feel a need to go to bat for them.
Fine.
I would say they were in my upper middle, and if people want to drop it to.
all right, with still an open mind, I want to turn it over to Mike and Andy on this one.
So, real quick on this one here, we are familiar with the project architect, the second guy, if you will. He was with a different firm. He's worked on a couple projects that we've worked on, and heard good things, that he was, on the older project, he was more junior, and he took a step up, and now this would maybe be another step up, which is logical. They didn't tell us what the PM or the project architect were working on right now, which, again, not a red flag, but certainly something I would ask if we got to an interview. The relative projects, it almost, I'll say from our experience, we give one set of relative projects if it's a school job, and another one if it's a hospital job. It almost seemed like we had their municipal list. There's a lot of fire departments, a lot of police departments, not a lot of schools. And I know this company has done a lot of schools. Just from personal experience, so.
It's funny, they kind of highlighted the schools, was how I took it.
Yeah,
So it was like, here's a full list, and then we'll
And
highlight
here's the
the
schools.
ones.
and then on the schedule, again, they gave us a good beginning of the schedule and said, yeah, we'll open in the fall of '23, but didn't kind of fill in the middle.
I'm not hearing an argument to put this in our top bucket. Am I hearing an argument to put this in our bottom bucket? I'm gonna suggest it land in the 2s for the present time. Matt,
I second that.
am I moving too quickly on this one?
No, I didn't have a lot of notes on this one.
All right, we're gonna move then to number 10, please. And number 10, I found impressive. Reed asked me why. I thought their knowledge of public schools was
Yeah, we got that.
Yeah, we got
that.
relatively strong. Anybody else find that? Public school familiarity, a strong card for them? Everything else, I wouldn't say topped the charts for me, but bottom line score came out relatively high for me. Matt?
Well, I guess my question for the team is, I mean, clearly this firm has absorbed a number of staff who have a lot of experience in Concord. And so, I mean, I don't know, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yes.
That's a question I had for you, because I wasn't here
Right,
on the previous
right.
project. so.
Yeah,
I
same.
think the lessons learned, or not learned, or whatever.
Yeah,
Right.
and I'm gonna put context to all of this, because I only know it secondhand, to some extent, a little firsthand with the last project that they did. They're very, very capable at their work. That is not up for discussion. I do think there's been some political pieces with the prior projects and the former firm, that I would really worry could haunt us. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yep.
Could you say that again?
I'm a little worried that there's political baggage from the prior firm that did the other projects in town
Right.
that could haunt this project, not because of
And
the
how would
work.
that haunt it?
There's an impression left in parts of the community of cost monitoring and some things like that.
Right, and not attention to managing things.
Yeah, well, I'm familiar with that project, so.
Right, there we go.
But I saw a tremendous amount of Concord stuff, but there's a lot of really good things in here, relative to the sustainability side. But you look at some of the results from a sustainability point of view in some of these other projects that I have questions about those. So I'm hearing what you say, and there's some facts behind that. It's not just perception.
You're saying,
What?
related to sustainability?
Yeah.
There's facts that are good or bad? Like what?
Well, open to
Mixed.
question.
Okay, well, just for example, here's their proposal, okay? Here's north, every single one of these classroom bars has east-facing classrooms, every single one. I don't know, that's not good building siting in my world. It's just like, those are basics. And so, from a sustainability standpoint, it almost doesn't matter to a degree what the relationships of them are. You want good light in the core learning spaces. And for me, that anyone that's gonna claim, hey, we do sustainable buildings and we make them energy efficient and we do all the right things. Number one is siting the building properly and getting natural daylight to the core learning spaces. And I look at a diagram that they used a whole entire page for, and it's east facing, which is,
But they said all the right things in there, though.
yeah, I know,
But-
so
but-
that's so then when I get to that, I'm like, whoa, but wait, you're missing
I
something.
think of the same thing. I wonder if some of these folks, because of the preliminary reviews, they get that bias of fitting. It just, they look at that site
Yeah.
and they sort of fall into the east and they don't get out of that particular box, the siting
Yeah.
part of it. And I looked at the same thing, I said, no, wait a minute. Why does this look familiar? Oh, I've seen this a few times.
Yeah.
Everybody's going east.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe, I mean, for
And
something
then maybe
like,
they believe that's the best they can do with that site, but really, if it's early.
Yeah. It's definitely a tough site, don't get me wrong, like,
Right.
we're gonna have our challenges with that site, but I also think that priorities need to be placed on,
Mhm.
you can't change where you put the building. You need to get that right the first time.
Yeah, I'd say also from the sustainability, I agree with their language is good. The consultants that they chose to back that up aren't the strongest, I would say.
And just a question on individuals without names. The proposed project manager, is it the project manager individual, because of the history here, that could be a negative versus the project manager's former principal. Am I reading too cryptic? Try to write it out. The history with this particular individual who's the proposed project manager, that individual's history with Concord, any negatives associated with that individual versus the people the individual worked for last time. This individual is no longer a member of that firm, correct?
That firm doesn't exist anymore.
Well, that may speak to a whole other level of input.
They had a good schedule. They had lots of different schedule options.
Right.
Yeah, I
appreciate
had
it.
that note too, propose multiple schedule options to work with us, yeah.
I would advocate, I would say it too, to move us along.
Okay.
My level of concern on this is high,
Yeah.
given
Mhm.
the feedback I've had in the last couple of years.
So I think maybe to your point, we had talked about, adjusting teams and stuff like that, maybe that's something that would be considered. I thought the package overall, I liked it, I liked the schedule, like Matt said. The fees that they had in 8B, one of the things I was always doing is kind of looking at the fees, typical fees in that 10% range. And what I was trying to do was look for outliers, like somebody that's either always lower or always higher, because I wanted to bring that to the committee. And I didn't have the fees, they just didn't have them listed. So maybe an oversight, they had the LSBA on the org chart. A small thing, but, very small thing, but it just, it caught me. But, and then I noted that they had team members that had Concord experience. Again, I didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. It sounds like it may be a question there. And although it was an east-facing design, I kind of liked, I'm an engineer, not an architect, so I look at things from a different perspective, and I like the just layout.
Yeah, the general layout seems fine,
Yeah, I like that.
but it,
But I think Don highlights that it's not attention to detail, we're looking for
Exactly.
continuity on.
to back up what's written, right? Like, so if you say something, do it.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I don't know, maybe it's just a pet peeve I have
No,
right
I
now and I
think
seem
you're-
really caught
I
up
think
on
you're
it. But I
absolutely
keep
right.
seeing it, and it's not just here, I keep seeing it, that people are like,
shows-
we're super sustainable, but wait, we don't even put our building in the right place or in the right
It shows that
direction.
they're
or-
not really in that mindset.
Yeah, I don't know. So, but otherwise, they were fine. They've been around doing schools and.
So what I've heard since Matt suggested it too was more two evidence. Did others do the same?
Yeah, me too. I'm in that bucket.
Okay. Moving along, if we might, brings us to Mount Vernon. Forgive me,
Oh,
I
let's
blew it
see.
too, I apologize.
We're
Oh.
getting tired.
That's
Oh.
gonna be in a tough place.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
I apologize.
it's okay.
Is that recoverable? Should we move to another number?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moved it on.
Yeah.
Let's work with our final one on our list, far right, please.
Applicant 14.
And I will offer up, this was in my middle group, and I can't say I had any top of charts ratings or serious concerns. Lori?
Yeah, I would agree, it wasn't taken one way or the other. So I'd be curious to hear other people's impressions.
And you're two? Didn't you say?
Yeah.
They had King Open on
Yeah.
there,
Certainly.
but I couldn't tell which,
Team
on that one, I
another
couldn't tell who
applicant.
did what.
That was my point earlier. Architects teaming.
Yeah, I mean, they're all
You just-
claiming,
exactly what I
claiming
had,
victory here, and I'm so, well, okay,
There was two different ones that said.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly, so. And
Yes.
it's small, it's a small company. But, yeah, I was in a bit of a quandary over this one.
To that, Charlie, I would say they didn't, they're one of the few firms that have a project that firms could talk about, and I don't feel like they really focused
They
on
really
it.
did it, yeah.
So, to me, it
Well, I
didn't feel like
couldn't,
they
yeah.
were focused on the sustainability side, because they have one of the great examples.
They did.
And they
It's a top
really,
example.
in actually, most of their write-ups, they didn't even, you wouldn't know anything about the sustainability of that project.
Yeah, I agree. I sort of had greater expectations and then I
Yeah.
rated it harder there given.
Yeah.
23 EUI.
But they don't even mention it in some of their project
Yeah.
write-ups. So yeah, to me it was a lower,
I'm currently
lower
working with
two,
them.
but
I think they're a great firm to work with.
Yeah.
Very responsive. The proposal is not great.
mhm.
I don't think they even read my addendum. They submitted 20 copies instead of 12. But that doesn't mean that they're disqualified.
Oh, but it's another example of attention to detail.
Well, I think that's what we saw is
Yeah.
we would give them a higher mark on their performance than on their proposal. You know, like
Yeah.
what our experience.
Externally, I had a good impression of them reputation-wise before I started reading it, and they didn't meet my expectations.
I think they have a good sustainability experience, especially with.
Looked like it. I mean, if
But they didn't showcase.
if they actually did the stuff, you know.
They had a couple of larger sized projects, not a lot. They have the schedule in there. They're working with us right now on another larger project, doing a very good job there. But again, I think proposal wise, I was underwhelmed. I was looking for more because I know how good they are.
Yeah.
Which one of our applicants was the other half of, can you open number 2?
Yes.
Okay. So we got them in there. We got somebody in there that did that.
Well, for
That
what
had a
it's
major role
worth,
in that school.
and, you know, I'm gonna be careful with what I say, it'll be interesting to call references on that project.
Right.
Because my firm is currently doing the next project in that city, and neither of those firms got
Got
that
it.
project. So
Okay.
for what it's worth,
Yeah, no, that's right. Absolutely.
and I don't have any inside knowledge, but I do know that my team, not me, but people in my firm have toured that building and been to it and had mixed emotions about it. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. You know, it's a school, it did an okay job. And, I'd be interested to hear what Cambridge thinks, the town thinks of that
Well,
project,
and
city.
the town has significant background and experience.
Doing,
So they,
Yes.
you know, they put an envelope around the project with their expertise, and they're not like kind of advanced,
Mhm.
I would say. Would you
Yeah.
agree with that?
oh, I would definitely agree with that. They have a lot of mandates that other cities and towns don't have.
So maybe it was
That-
easier to get to where they got.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to take away from them, but, pardon me?
That they were more driven there, they were
They
more
were very,
forced
very driven.
than
Yeah.
They had to get
kind of
Very good.
proactive about getting to there.
And it's also worth noting these teams are now submitting follow-up projects separately, not together. So that might speak to
okay.
relationships
Okay.
also. I don't know, but for what it's worth. I don't know, these
So
guys
what
were on these were in my middle bucket for me. For those reasons. Do I have other, hold on. I say PM only has one public school, they as a firm only have 2.
Yeah.
One of which is built and we just spoke to, the other one is under construction. And they use that as an example of demonstrating experience working on an occupied campus and minimizing impacts on the operation. The project's not done, so how can you speak to that as experience? In my mind, like,
We're not there yet.
yeah, so those were some of my
Because
notes.
it's very different project.
Yeah, and they don't have a standalone middle school, so they scored low on those potential 5 points for me. So,
So what I'm hearing is unfortunately their proposal doesn't help them more than it does. And it's landing them in a 2 space is what I'm hearing from the committee, but I wonder if you could offer up more. Like, you okay with what you've shared?
I think that everything that's been said is valid. I think to Don's point, the project that's ongoing, when it's done, is going to be a very congested area or a very tight site, very complicated site. Lots of different things about it that will be unique, but it hasn't happened just yet.
It's not done yet, so.
The planning's there and
yes.
and it's
Yep,
going well.
Agreed, so they're partway there, yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
But
Yeah, but when you speak to experience, you have to speak to what's done. So they could have spoken
Yeah.
to the study and the design of that, but they can't speak to the
That's what I'm
actual
saying.
success of it yet, in my mind, so.
So I want us to turn to the column immediately to the left of what we just reviewed.
Read number 13.
Thank you very much. And I would open up by saying this is in the very top of my middle bucket, and I'd like to be convinced it could go higher.
Which one are we on?
Number
13.
13. Particular merits to point out from your review. Questions? Concerns? Was this,
I don't
can
wanna be the only one speaking,
Was
so
this-
I'm waiting for others.
I ask who put this in a middle bucket?
Yeah.
This was on the low end of my top bucket.
Okay, similar to mine, okay. Can you give me one data point that helped you put it there?
My comments were focused on sustainability and net zero energy, less on logistics and deliverables. I know they're capable, I do question capacity given recent wins.
Thank
Was my 2-cent tour. Because I know this firm also just recently, last week, won another project.
Agreed, yeah.
Which is obviously too late to make it into their proposal, so, but they're a reasonable sized firm, so I guess in my mind, that doesn't
Wait, is this,
disqualify them.
are we on
Third.
12 or
13.
13? 13, right?
13,
Alright.
yep. But that's something I would certainly bring up if brought to an interview,
Okay.
so.
Laura, you
us you
seem
can do
to be
Yeah, I mean,
somewhat
I
on
have-
board with that?
My comments were on, I liked some of the design they proposed. They did talk on sun, so to your point of light. They do have a project in a community I taught in a long time ago, so I think that's a pro, but to your point, maybe on the capacity side, it's not. So, and then.
They're out there, like,
Yeah.
they're a very,
Yeah,
very good firm
yeah.
and very capable, and none of that worries me, like, I would love to see them on this project, I just do have concerns about capacity, but that's, and they also teamed with another firm, right? Am I-
Correct.
They did.
Okay,
This one
they're
they
one of the
did.
ones that did,
Yeah.
there are two that, yeah. So again, just to my point earlier about like
You've got the wrong
clarity,
book there.
what,
So, yeah,
No.
you're thinking 12.
And we're on 13.
And
We're
we're on
13.
13.
Yeah,
they're listed that way in mine, they're backwards in mine, sorry. But both of them teamed, huh? Okay, sorry, my
Well,
comments were to 12. They're listed in my summary backwards.
This is 13.
Okay, yeah, okay, let me get, sorry, my fault. They're listed backwards in my summary, so I had them the other way. So I wrote about the, why pair with another firm, what will the roles be? I didn't see any examples of the occupied campus solutions, in minimizing the impacts. And then concerned about size for this firm compared to past school experience, and in particular, not public K-12, but other types of school.
But that seems to be why they teamed, probably, right? Was to bring in that additional capacity. I mean, I guess I'll say, so my firm has a very tiny contract with one of these firms. It is very small, so I won't disclose that, but it's within our overall income, it's totally insignificant.
But nonetheless, you and Dawn have done your reporting on that, so.
Yes,
And I
yeah.
submitted a form, I submitted a form prior to knowing who was submitting it, but I'll be
Thank you.
totally honest with who I have,
Good.
financial,
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, so these guys were still at were they the low end of my, hold on, let me go back to my summary, which has them in the wrong order, so let me make sure. They were in my middle bucket.
Okay.
they're very
for what it's
small.
worth. They're small, they do a more charter type school,
Yeah,
like
very
private
small.
and,
But they teamed with somebody
Right.
who's big, so
Right.
that's why I think.
but out of
They
Syracuse,
teamed up.
right? Do I have
Correct,
this right?
That's
That's right.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Just check my work today, clearly. Yeah, so, but that's, in my mind, I'm like, okay, so who's gonna do what? Because a firm in Syracuse is obviously not gonna know public K-12 projects in Massachusetts.
Right.
Unless a firm has done something
They have
else.
not.
but they have
They have not, from what I could tell, they have not. So, yeah, so those were my questions, like, why are they teaming and then what are the roles?
Yeah, I think there could have been a better explanation in the summary about how that would work.
Yeah,
So I felt like that was missing. I will say that this scored well for me. It was in my top bucket. I feel like they have great sustainability examples. They didn't quite go to Passive House,
They
but
talked to it.
yeah.
but they did mention it, right?
No,
But they
four
didn't go
people
to
were
it
certified
in terms of, so.
so they are only 11 architects.
Yeah.
And I do
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
I'm not confusing my firms, these guys have also recently won a job, and to be honest, I don't even know if it's in here, with the MSBA, one of their first. So for what that's worth, when you only have 10 people, that's becomes, because a team is more than 1 or 2 people usually.
So we've heard capacity a few times, we've heard the team approach and its potential pros and cons. Mike, you wanna weigh in?
I think a lot of what you've said is what you'd hear from me. I think, again, I think I said this a couple times, if this was a smaller job, I think they might be higher rankings for me. But I think, we've worked with them before, we've been very happy with them on smaller projects. I would be a little concerned with a project of this size. I think that they were very good on the sustainability. I think the way I read it was their team, their partner, was bringing the sustainability with them. Not that the first team didn't have, but the second team was stronger in that. I thought that was the team that had the Passive House, that type of stuff.
I guess I jump in there. I mean, I think the first team does as well.
Right.
And I think my read, and that's why I guess I would advocate for, at least it's an interview-worthy submission, because the second day they clearly had to realize that they couldn't do the project by themselves.
Yeah.
I see what you're
They've addressed the capacity issue by bringing in a bigger firm. Now, are we comfortable with the fact that that firm is in upstate New York? I think that's something that we can discuss, but.
It's definitely a discussion to have, especially if we decide to go design, bid, build.
Right.
The other comment I had was specific to the project manager. That project manager has a good amount of overall experience. My research internal with my company is that project manager was actually with one of the other submissions about 10 days ago. So they're saying that they are with the company less than a year, but it's a lot less than a year.
Interesting.
So take that for what it's worth. I think that person certainly has experience, has K-12 school experience, but is pretty much brand new to the company.
I'm hearing about a firm that has a lot of potential with a lot of risks that would have to be addressed, or risks, for lack of a better.
Push it lower rather than,
Well,
I don't know.
no,
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm sort of
not
going
necessarily-
ahead to where it comes
let
in.
me ask another question. If this firm were to work out magnificently, do they bring sustainability that others couldn't?
Potentially.
I think they
Potentially.
have demonstrated that they could.
Potentially. So
Yeah,
that to
and
me
they'd
would
actually-
say, our obligation might be at this stage to keep them in. Notwithstanding all those concerns that would have to be sorted through, because we're only trying to get to interviews.
Right, that's all this is.
Well, they've done the sustainability stuff as opposed to just talking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
They actually have
Exactly.
hardcore examples, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm hearing this is an investment we need to make then, that being keep them on, put them in our one bucket.
And we have more than 4 in our top bucket
This
at
would
the end of the day.
be the fourth.
What if we had 5? Is that a bad thing?
Well, then we look at what we have at the end and we say, are we comfortable with our
Yeah,
ones?
do any
Do
of
we
them
want
fall
to debate that anymore? And if we say, no, we're
Right.
comfortable with our ones, then we debate what's in that one bucket. And say, do we want to pare it down further? And if so, why or why not? Does that sound like
Yeah,
process?
sure. Yeah.
So I've pitched an idea here. Do we have strong
In the
thoughts
one.
about, yes.
Sounds good, go ahead.
Chris,
I'll
do not
follow
defer to me.
along. I'm enjoying the consensus that's.
All right. Mike, well, good?
Yes,
Okay, we're gonna move on then to number 12 in our list. And I'm gonna say this didn't make the cut for me, not even close. But I was ever hopeful as I went through the proposal. I was concerned about engaging facilities as one of my flags.
Like non-inspired?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
and I think that's important. This is our 5th and final project in this town. And middle school students and teachers deserve a place that they really want to go to.
Yeah,
You and I are diverging for one, I mean, from,
Good, good.
like, I
Thankfully.
learned
Yeah.
not to make Senate comments long ago, but so from a sustainability perspective, they score high, I think they do well. They did bring in a outside passive house consultant, so I think they get some kind of credit for that. And I think they have a good reputation. They have one of the leaders in the firm who has been a leader within the kind of sustainability community around Boston. So I would rank this one higher. This was in bucket number 1 for me.
What else would you put among their stronger assets from your review, Matt? That's one clearly that is very significant to all of us.
I liked the layout. They had a couple small errors in their summary. They repeated some sections a couple times.
saw that.
So again, to this is our first deliverable, and there was some lack of attention to detail. I don't know. I don't have a lot more pitch for it. It was.
But they
it was
were
a
in your
bucket-
number.
It was a bucket 1.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
I had good scores on sustainability as well, and for exactly the same reason. Matt and I did not talk about this, but for exactly the same reason, having to do with the affiliation with a well-known external outfit that does, can I say it?
Nope.
Passive house.
Oh, you say passive house, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so, and I know in the case of one of their recent projects that they did get, very good sustainability results from the plan perspective. Hasn't been built yet, so, we don't know, but it's also not a new building. So it's hard to score them on appearance of the design, if that's what we're doing.
No, just one of many
Okay,
factors.
so I didn't get into the uplifting nature of the designs.
Is the project you're
I just got the
referencing,
sustainability stuff.
is the project you're referencing, built?
No.
Okay.
They're very, like, you look at their sub-consultants, and it's a very in-house
Yes.
team.
Yes, mostly,
They're in-
very in-house.
Which-
Yeah, what's considered an AE firm, which does architecture as well as engineering, so they're
Considered
gonna,
a what?
architecture and engineering
okay.
in-house, so an AE firm, like architecture
Yeah,
and
okay.
engineering, so like their mechanical engineer might be sitting right next to an architect.
wondered
that
about
might be-
that.
Yeah, so, that just,
Which I think it generally thought of as a good thing.
Helps with the coordination.
Right, exactly.
Right, in theory it does, right?
Exactly.
As long as they're sitting next to each other.
Right. and they also do
Separate buildings,
commissioning, which they
right.
mentioned, yeah, so I mean, they kind of do a little bit of everything.
I guess I don't think of their engineering firm as strong on the sustainability as the architecture team, but there is some value to having that in-house. There are pros and cons to it. We'd say in general, it's probably overall positive.
Mayor?
Yes, please.
A few different pieces on this. One is that they're in a neighboring community that had a lot of struggles to get their buildings passed through the town input and feedback, and I think they must have had some skill set to be able to accomplish that. It was a long, painful endeavor in that community, and they've now got 2 projects there. One's finished or almost, and we're due to visit in a couple
So
of
you're
weeks.
saying that they helped with that?
They must
rather
have,
than
because that,
Cause
the saga was very long and difficult.
Were they brought in after the initial,
I don't know that part of the story,
that would
but
be
we
good
can
to
find
know.
out.
That would be very
The
good to know.
superintendent's due here this afternoon. for
I
a
thought they
meeting.
were, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. They also designed 2 buildings we live in every day here in Concord, and I do think we have to say, there's a lot of positives to that. I think we could all find, as in any building, we could all find a few things I wonder why they did what they did, but I see a lot of high functioning environments for our kids that are really positive, and we're thriving in those environments, so I think we need to say that out loud. We have some positive history here. And third, I know they really are eager to come back. They've been very connected with me and making sure when I'm available to them, they find me and share that with me. So I'm hearing Court's point. I'm kind of re-looking at things now, sort of discussing that.
In the history speaks a little bit to the standards back then
Yeah,
are
oh yeah,
very different from now.
yeah.
Times
Yeah, those
put
buildings are
aside-
15 years.
Exactly,
ago.
they're building to what the expectations were, and at times I think, wait, that shouldn't be such a negative, because one hopes,
Right.
we've all learned things,
Yeah.
we're getting
I
better.
have some
at
dogs
it.
in my portfolio, don't worry. From the 90s, like it's, that's just the time and there,
Well,
it's
exactly.
amazing how
And
they
one
change.
was partial renovation, and that forever
Yeah.
can be a bigger.
Exactly.
And I'm not calling either of those projects by the way, projects, I'm just
No,
saying
but-
like maybe less than inspiring.
No,
At times, I actually, when my daughter goes to one of those schools, I didn't even know who built it, didn't know anything about the project, and as I was walking out, I saw the plaque, saw who designed it, and was like, yeah, all right, like this is a solid school, like I get why it is, right,
They
but,
are.
and so
Right,
it's.
and I think we're aware, because you hear this a lot in the community, well, there was that project, and these are the things I don't like, and regularly I'll tell you, remember how many years that happened? It's been so long.
Yeah.
You know, the world has changed a lot, even in 5 years, what in 10, so.
The other thing is that project that you were referring to is a real net zero project.
Yes,
It's
they,
not just
to
fake.
your point of like
It's not
adjusting to the times, I
potential.
think we've got some history
Yeah,
to see
yeah,
that they've
that's
tried
right.
to really
They-
do.
That's the one that's scheduled to visit?
No, the one under construction, right?
The one
is
under
the-
construction.
Our ambitious sustainability one.
Yeah, they got
Yeah.
low EEI,
Is that under construction?
100%.
Yeah,
Solar.
not built yet.
I think it's
But it's
still
not
in,
built yet, no.
I think it's still being drawn. 'cause
John, I think you're
But
right.
it's
Someone left my
approved.
firm to go
Funding's
work on
approved.
that.
Yeah, I think they're still drawing. The other building's open.
Yeah.
The other
Funding is
building's
approved.
open.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so they were my original point, and sorry, I got confused because they literally are in the wrong, they're backwards on my, for whatever reason.
Can you hold that thought for a
Yeah.
second? I just want to point out that I believe the score sheet that we received a week ago and the chart we're looking at today is the source of the confusion.
Oh, yeah?
between the
Okay.
two.
Yeah.
So I
Okay,
think we're
so
gonna
it's
need
not
to,
just me.
we're gonna need to revisit, after we finish this first review, we're gonna have to revisit 2 of these to make certain people knew what they were talking about.
Okay.
Because we're working with
The flip-flop.
yeah, okay, so in fairness to the applicants and ourselves, We're gonna have to double check our work.
I thought it was just
It's
me,
not you,
because
no.
I've been waking up at 3 a.m.
Well, so where are
to read
we?
these, because
Where
that's
are
the
we
only
then
time
with-
that I
So we
have.
are right now on the large chart number 12.
Number 12 on this sheet, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm
Large
good.
chart number
Okay.
12?
I was wondering where we were with buckets on this.
But
Yeah, and they're
for purpose
13 on
of the
mine.
visual, number 12.
Yeah.
Because I'm going
this is-
off of
this
my
is the-
notes.
This is
Yeah.
number 12.
You have the right one now.
Okay, yep. I think everyone but me had it, because I think you're all following along on paper, and I'm looking at my notes, which has the Excel spreadsheet where they're flip-flopped. Okay, that makes sense.
So am I hearing a suggestion, I'm not asking for formal motions or anything, just a suggestion that this land in an interview pool or somewhere below that at the present time? Are we hearing?
May I have
That-
a comment?
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah, sorry.
I think they've done a lot of master planning for school, but then the size of the project, like similar to our project, I don't think they have that much experience on the size of the project, but they have a great experience on things. I'm proposing sustainability. They mentioned passive house. I even flagged that they have great sustainability here. So one thing, the project manager, she's been with the company for 2 years. Total experience is about 10. She listed as 50% available. So she's also on 2 other projects, so something I'll look at a little later.
Yeah, I think what I looked at from that perspective is that the project manager met the minimum requirement of 10, and that was a little concerning, but then I looked at the people backstopping that project manager, and there's a lot of experience there, so that tells me that even though this project manager may only have 10 years experience.
I was just thinking that in my head, I'm like,
Right.
only 10 years.
Only 10 years,
That's a pretty high bar we have.
That person's leading a group of more experienced people, so that person is
Yeah.
probably very good at what they do. So I mentioned that they've worked in Concord before, the in-house we talked about, and then again, I think Matt maybe mentioned it, that I saw some things that I'll say that might have been typos, like repeated
Yeah.
information, and then values of the dollar value of the contract or the construction versus what their fee was, just didn't line up either. Yeah, I think it might be off by decimal places or something like that. So.
I just wanted to repeat real quick, because I said it under the number, the backwards number, so, but that they focused a lot on sustainability and net zero, less on the logistics and deliverables, which wasn't necessarily presented here, but knowing what I know they're capable, they certainly have plenty of experience. I think I wrote that, I know they're capable. And again, I just worry about their capacity, so I don't think it's a disqualifier, I just want, if they get interviewed, I wanna have a conversation about that, because they just wanna, and to your point earlier about repeat clients, they just want a MSBA repeat client project last week, so, which isn't in the proposal. So kudos to them for winning that, but I just wanna make sure that they're still able
It's
to
the same
service.
team.
Is it the same team? See, I don't even know.
No, I don't know.
Oh, I don't know, yeah, I don't know.
Right, but that's like an interview question, right, that's why.
That's my point, yep, so that doesn't, again, it wouldn't disqualify them, I certainly think, and from their design and their diagram, for as many as I've been negative on, I think they did a much better job than others, so for whatever that's
A
worth.
little better orientation on that.
Yeah, it's better, yeah. Yeah. So, that's what a diagram should, first glance, you look at a couple things like buses and cars, are they separate? Like you look at where the classrooms are, there are a few things that, but anyway. I felt like I've been negative on it, there are good ones, I don't wanna be negative. Everyone's great, but
So-
some are better.
So I'm hearing we check a few boxes on this, we have a few concerns, as we do with every applicant, unique concerns. Is there a sentiment that we would put this in our interview category, number 1 for the present time? I'm seeing affirmative nods.
Yes.
Okay, and that is our large chart number 12. Okay. And that leaves us with one final,
Number
and that's 11, and
Thank God we all are now thinking it's 11, yeah.
so I'm going to say that This, in the independent review I did, landed in an interview category. And I'd like to open up conversation. I believe this is a firm that has some relevant experience. Did others come up with that stuff?
I'm gonna listen first.
Small company.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so capacity questions.
I'm going to say something you said earlier about a different firm. When it comes to inspiring architecture, it's not there for me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of their buildings look the same,
Mhm.
and I even commented that the program, the proposal that in the suggested, the diagramming that they did, looks like every other building I've seen that they do, the footprint. It's got an interior courtyard, which, like, interior as an exterior space that is like a square, I don't know how else to describe it. But that it felt like there wasn't a lot of extra effort put in there, and that, this is my brain at 3 a.m., west-facing classrooms, blah. Like, I don't know, I'm like,
I was flaming out.
so for me, yeah, like this looks like a lot of other schools, and especially that. So they're, speaking to the uninspiring, for me, that was this one. But again, it's subjective, so I don't wanna be the only voice at the table.
I see pictures like that, and I can't help but ask, did the client demand it?
Yeah,
Well,
well, did every client they work with demand it, or is it the designer?
And I do not disagree with any of that, and that one of the concerns, of course, with that generic approach is cost. And does that have a significant effect on the overall project cost because of just what we've seen? I don't know enough about the details, but is that a less expensive option when they look like this and have these materials and designs versus some of the other things we've seen?
Was it best case under circumstances?
Well, yeah, or, they're not, this is their bias, but also the municipalities they've worked for, the school systems, that.
And unfortunately, we don't know those drivers. They're fair questions.
Yeah.
I know a lot of them, which is why I'm sitting so quietly.
Well,
This is a group I worked
I
with
didn't mean to try to
before. So,
set you up there,
yeah.
but.
Other comments, and then we're gonna ask Lori to just
Yeah.
speak.
See if I have
I would say
anything.
that this is a bucket two for me.
Yeah,
It's-
okay.
It didn't,
Yeah,
it didn't rise to the top for me, from my perspective.
I didn't find much compelling. I mean, I have stickers on all of the pages and comments that I liked, and I didn't, nothing too much rose out of this one. And I figure, well, maybe I missed something, maybe I should read it again. But that's
Okay.
the category it was in for me.
So given what I'm hearing so far, Lori may choose to not comment yet.
Yeah,
Up to you.
Do you have anything? Okay, so, yeah, no, I think I should. I opened this school that's on the cover, so that, I do know a lot about this group. I think there's a lot of positives. Some of you have been to this building and you go in and impressive is a word I would use. I would argue differently a little.
Mhm.
I think when you put them next to all the schools they've laid out here, maybe it changes that opinion a little bit. When you walk in that school, it is nothing short of impressive. Very responsive to the community's input and requests that they were given. I think fit is a word I'm gonna use, and just very, very not sure that the fit would be, and that's only knowledge you have when you work that closely with someone and then try to translate it to a different community, but I worry a lot about fit. The building was on budget, on time. I worked in that school for 3 years. It's a high functioning, high capacity space. There's just no other way to say it. So there's a lot of positives. I just have a lot of worry about it.
Good, thank you. Mike, Andy?
I'll probably reiterate what Lori said. I've worked with this group before. I think all good people.
Yeah.
Their PM, in my experience, is the PM until the project goes to construction, and then it kind of backs off.
Yeah.
I liked him, maybe he was the best of the group, I'll say, in my opinion. And if he was on the job the whole time, I might like him a little bit more. I think he's already on 3 projects right now, which makes me a little worried, so I think, to me, it was a high 2, but not maybe a 1. But it's,
So we have fit and capacity and a few arguments for a 2 classification at this point. All right. So if we're content, that's where we'll score this one. And what I'm going to propose, given the hour 10 to 10, is that, Mike, you review with us on the big chart.
yes.
For clarity here. The rankings,
Do you want to take a 5-minute break?
I do, as soon as we hear
Okay,
this,
perfect,
just so
so
we
we're
can
on the
sort of let
same
this
page.
percolate during a break. And then we'll take a 5-minute break and then dive back in. So we're gonna hear the rankings as Mike thinks he heard them on big chart. We're then gonna pose the question, after our break, do we need to dive back into any columns? Was there indeed any confusion about referencing numbers because 2 docs had 2-column issues? I think, Dawn, you helped us catch it early, thankfully, but let's make sure that everybody's okay.
Yep.
Mike, will you take us through it?
Sure, so I'm gonna just go right down the list from 1 to 14 here. So I had a 3, a 2,
Go slowly.
number 3 was a 3, number 4 was a 2, number 5 is a 1, number 6 is a 1, number 7 is a 1, number 8 is a 3, number 9 is a 2, number 10 is a 2, number 11 is a 2, number 12 is a 1, number 13 is a 1, and number 14 is a 2.
That syncs up with mine.
Yes.
I'm comfortable with knowing what we were discussing.
Would you repeat
Questions, comments? Yes, please.
repeat the 1 through 3 again?
One through, go ahead, Mike.
It's number 1 is a 3, number 2 is a 2, number 3 is a 3, number 4 is a 2.
Okay.
5 ones.
Okay. So we're going to come back at this in 5 minutes. I'd like to move, we take a 5-minute recess. All in favor?
Aye.
Let's think of staff.
We're actually
My-
letting you
my
talk, but
staff was-
We're back on track.
My
So
my
my-
cat was chewing on some of these binders.
Call him to order, Court.
I'm working on it. All right, so by way of process, we have reconvened, we're gonna continue. And we, at the present time, have 5 on our short list thus far, let's call it. We have our work by no means complete. We're going to try to bring, in fact, must bring a short list to the larger committee Monday morning. And we can work with our 5, or we can decide what revisits might be appropriate at this time. We did refer to a couple with a number 2 designation with a hold reference made at the time and so on. I want to turn it over to Mike for a minute and just let him make a pitch for a way possibly forward, and then hear from others in the group about how to close out this process today.
So I think the first thing I would say, just kind of reiterating what Court was mentioning, is just ask everybody before we get into the actual numbering and actually putting numbers to the individuals, is everybody comfortable with the list? Is there anybody that wants to make an argument that one of the number 1s should actually be a number 2, or one of the number 2s should be a number 1? Big picture here, what I'm looking at is we're trying to get down to 4. So I would say we want to rank at least 5, if not 6, number-wise, so that we can understand it. So if there's anybody that has a concern that, whatever number is a number 1, and I think there are 2, or that this is a 2, and I think they really should be number 1.
Wait, so sorry, I'm sorry, just
that's
process. Are we trying to get, I guess I thought we were just trying to get to 4 and not necessarily rank.
I was actually gonna ask the
4.
same question. Are we trying, and I'll tell you
Yeah.
why I'm asking. Because as an architect, if I'm number 5, I may not think I have
Yeah.
a chance on,
Yeah.
or 4, whatever. I might say, oh, well, number 1s, they're a shoe-in. Like, I'm not saying that people have dropped out because
Right.
they think that there's a favorite versus a non-favorite. So
Right.
food for thought, I don't know, I don't
Yeah.
think I had the thought that we would actually rank them, but bring a number to the committee. Correct me if I'm
And
wrong.
that speaks to what you and I talked about. The only required rank order follows the interviews,
Yes,
where the town manager needs to know, number 1.
Mhm.
and number 2 in the
Should
event.
number 2 not work out, what's number 2?
Right.
That's the only formal rank ordering that I think we're obligated to produce.
And the MSBA does
Yeah.
not rank for interviews, they only rank for finalists. So when, they could go straight from proposal to direct select, in which they would rank, but they do not, they always say not in any order, unranked or whatever. For that reason, if you attend and you listen, you might think they have a favorite or don't, or the town has a favorite or doesn't, but food for thought is,
So our
we're
goal is a
asking.
group of finalists.
That's what I.
Yeah.
Clear the
I
plate,
guess I
right?
would
Like,
skip
let them all
there.
start fresh,
Yeah.
in my mind is how I would.
So they all
prefer.
show best effort with
Yes.
no preconditions or a sense of bias.
I mean, what's nice about our criteria is it allowed us to have the discussion to put them in the place, like, these are the favorites, as in the top tier, middle tier, lower tier. That helped us get there, I needed
Yep.
that in order to get to that place.
Mhm.
But I don't know, I think a lot of these guys are, all of the top, the number 1s are,
So what you're saying is if they're worthy of a presentation and an interview, they're worthy of a presentation and an interview, and we don't say, you're a number 5, climb a big hill, you're a number 1, climb a small
I
hill.
totally agree.
You're all
Totally agree
climbing
with
the
that.
same hill.
Yes.
Yep.
You know, because the imperfections in the proposals to begin with, you get misled. And then we typecast somebody into a spot that isn't appropriate. And I think that came out in the discussion that, maybe they
We're
made a
looking at
mistake,
snapshots.
Yeah.
And we're gonna get more breadth when we have people in the flesh here with their teams.
And of course, none of us made any mistakes.
I was gonna say,
Appreciate that cover, thank you.
with hard deadlines and trying to get your project work done, there are often times that you have regrets after. You're like, I should have written it this way, or I wish I had said that, or and like, to give people the benefit of the doubt, start fresh,
Yeah,
let them
I
all
agree.
come to it with a, and present their best showing.
So I'm going to ask two questions. One, to follow on what Mike said. Can anybody make a case, and it would be useful if you can, to move any of the twos into our short list for the present time? And if they land there, then I'm going to ask for another discussion, which is now what can we take out? And see if that leads us anywhere. It doesn't have to. Does anybody care to make a pitch for one to make it into this now top tier of 5? Are we missing any big opportunities from what we think we know by not having a certain firm in that short list?
From my perspective, I don't see any twos that I would elevate to a 1.
Charlie, you okay with?
I'm okay with it.
And Chris?
I think so.
Lori, would you want to make that? That's
The only one I'm pondering is is number 2, and
And that was
but
one
I'm
of
not
our
sure I'm
goals.
sold. I haven't sold myself yet, so
Yeah.
I would try to sell them.
Okay. And that
Well,
was-
So-
would it be helpful
Well, you
to
can pitch me on that
recap
one.
what the consensus of the ones are? Or that top group that you think are all within that top 5?
All right. So, and what we say are attributes of 1 may not be common to all 5. So.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, can I ask you another question? I asked before, I mean, can we continue with 5 through interview? Do we have to knock one off?
We don't have to.
Because,
we've been
there's
charged with this
error involved in here, and
responsibility.
the comments that we got on these 5, all these proposals are, these are good outfits.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to
Mhm.
try to draw a line around one of these that,
Yeah.
you know, like the, yeah.
Which
like
I
the-
think leads.
I had a question mark on some of them. And, because I liked the proposal, but I didn't necessarily couldn't see enough of what I wanted to see in there, but I liked it a lot.
Mhm.
And I think we need the interviews. You might come up with a dark horse there.
So I think.
But I guess that's just my comfort level with the, trying to knock somebody out of the
Yeah.
group of 5.
I think Charlie answered my number 2 question, which is you want to make a case to drop any out, and I just heard you, Charlie, say no, not at the present time.
Well,
Fine.
maybe we had identified some who were on the lower range that are already out. Now we're looking at the group that's still in the running to make that.
That is,
35.
yes, correct.
The
If-
5 number 1 firms.
Can we run
I
with
haven't
5
heard a
through the
case to
interview?
add any to our 5 to make a 6.
I'm good.
And if that's so, now I'm going to ask the alternate question, which is there any outfit on the group of 5 that you want to make a case isn't worthy of our time and further consideration? Do they fall so below another 4, for example, that you'd want to make the case for purposes of wisdom, efficiency, and so on to drop out? I think I'm hearing Charlie say no. They've made it this far, and we've got presentations to hear and questions to ask of all 5.
I'll say no. I think the 5 in the number 1 category are all great candidates. I think that it's possible that some may decide our chances aren't good or we're too busy, we recently won that, whatever the circumstances, they may drop out, we may end up with 4 anyway, to your point earlier about from 4 to 3. So let them decide. If they're not capable of putting this together and servicing us now, then they wouldn't likely be able to in the future. I'd rather them say that now than to get into the project. And so let's let them decide. We're telling them, you're qualified, you're capable, we're excited about you, and if we interview 5, we interview 5.
Lori?
Yeah, I think paralleling it back to the OPM process, we, I think, got to about the same point and had the same discussion and ended up pushing the whole group forward, and their interview process was just so rich in filling in all those questions that right now it's hard to vet to another level because we need more information.
The other piece of it, and I've said this before, advocating for only interviewing 3, it's expensive, and the resources putting into it are huge. Do not underestimate what it takes to put together, especially in 10 days, an interview, because they're trying to win a, great project. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. So that's the downside.
Yeah.
But again, I want to put it on their shoulders. If they can't do that, they know that that's why I thought it was important to put the schedule in the addendum. Tell them what is coming. They're all prepared to do this interview in 10 days or whatever it is from Monday. So let's put it out there. If they think their chances are too slim with 5 interviews, then maybe they're not the right candidate and they back out. But let's let them decide.
Yeah,
Because they're all capable.
I think the 5 probably was to the benefit of the town. Not that I want to make it ridiculously difficult for any of these very capable folks, but ultimately, we want to get the best candidates.
It's a huge decision. We need to make the right decision. So to shortchange a potential candidate just because we're trying to get to 3 firms is not fair.
Right.
These guys have all proven out of 14, which is an insane amount of proposals, that they're qualified and we're excited about them, so.
And to some extent, when you have a big pool the way we started, getting to the next round is maybe a little bigger than we initially thought to. It kind of follows logically.
Again, I apologize if could we just recap by numbers? What do you think?
So-
Maybe you've got those, Mike.
Right now, the number 1s that we're talking about, the ones that are in that top tier are applicant number 5, 6, 7, 12, and 13.
Matt, you want to weigh in?
No, I have
Okay.
nobody that I feel strongly needs to be removed from bucket 1, and I like Tom's recommendation that we put it on the design team to see if they want to see it.
So what this speaks to then is a consensus on our part, correct me if I'm wrong, that these 5, were they all to get to the interview on our invitation, would be viewed with a clean slate.
Absolutely.
There's
That's the
no
right thing to
ranking necessary at this point. We start fresh with not what they gave us, but now who they are and what they bring to us.
And just maybe a little far ahead of ourselves, we still have obviously the benefit of what they've already submitted. And
Oh, yeah.
able to
Yes.
relook at that,
And
which
we'll
will help
all-
us ask questions,
Yes.
fill in blanks.
Yeah, in fact, I think our interviews are going to be based on all knowledge sources we have, notably the proposals, notably their presentations. That'll be really grist for
And
conversation.
references and so forth.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna say one more part that is whoever is shortlisted is gonna have the references followed up on as well. Like I said, I've kind of done some of that internally with people that I know that have worked with people already, but
Yeah,
we'll
no,
do a
it's
formal
formal.
process on that and get that information out to the group.
So we would have the recommendations based on who they've listed, we would have that at the interview?
So
Or,
if you look in the proposals, they have references listed.
Yep.
We would call those, and then if there's other references that, Dawn has worked with somebody, or I've worked with somebody, or somebody, we can add to that list, but we would try and do, I'll say, an equal number of references for each one, so we're not calling 10 on one candidate and 1 on another candidate. We call 5 on this one, and we wanna call 5 on that one.
I think Matt's asking when we'll have that information. Is
Yeah.
it ahead of the interview?
right,
It's ahead of the interview,
Yeah.
yeah. The intention would be to get confirmation on Monday from the full committee.
Right,
We would try and make the calls maybe as soon as Monday afternoon to inform them that they've been shortlisted, and then probably on Tuesday, we'd start the reference process.
sooner than later.
Yes. Yeah, 'cause
just knowing
sometimes
what I know.
you make the
because-
call and you don't get a call back for a day or two.
Yeah, only because that day will be valuable to them, because they don't have a lot of days to put this together.
Is it
Well,
worth
that-
telling people today?
No, well, we don't have the
can't.
committees, yeah, that's why we were trying, the whole
Yeah, it's all-
timing of this got really,
That's why you're coming back Monday morning.
Monday is, yeah, we just need that formality of the committees, yeah.
Can't give them a heads up that contingent on Monday, blah, blah, blah.
I guess I don't know, procedurally, that's not,
I think we talked about
Okay,
that, and that's why
specialty.
we did not wait to have the committee, the full committee until Thursday. We
Yeah.
said we'd have it Monday morning, so. But the intention is that coming out of that, I'm gonna be making the calls Monday. So the reference calls, we're not waiting to make the reference calls, we're calling people on Monday.
Yep.
If for some reason something changed, I think we put Tuesday in as the date they'd know by, but
Yeah.
we're really
The
intending
intent
to
is
try and
Monday
do that.
for sure.
There are people in the audience, right, who know.
and if they have gleaned that they're one of them, they have a head start, so good for them.
Okay.
That's part of the beauty of corporate process,
Come to a
right?
meeting, you might get a little more. A couple of things we did out of the OPM one that's just food for thought. I think if there were questions we had that didn't come through in the proposal, when we called to invite the firm back, we gave them some preliminary information to be sure, and I don't know how much you tracked of what we said or didn't say, so that's just food for thought. To say the committee is inviting you back, they are hoping to hear more about capacity or whatever it would be, Don, I remember.
Sustainability, yeah.
Sort of highlighted some of the pieces that hadn't been answered. And we were also very clear that once they were a finalist, their firm was publicly named. So I'm sure that is obvious, but. And to your point, we didn't have anybody say they didn't want to come back, they were just
Right.
thrilled to be invited, so.
Yeah,
They
so-
took on the challenge of the work and the risk that went with it.
I would be thrilled if I was one of 14 and made it to a finalist of 5, so
to the
that's
final
like
round.
a good showing, that's a
Yeah.
great showing.
Well, so along those lines, Lori, I guess, are we going to have a meeting to prepare for the interviews in terms of how we ask questions? Are we compiling the questions ahead of time? Are we assigning, I know,
It's a good idea.
We talked a little bit about this at, was it an SPC versus the design subcommittee, that my meetings are all mixing together in my head, I can't remember who was there, but we talked a little bit about not having standard questions,
okay,
because quite frankly, a lot of them are gonna answer standard questions. For me, for the OPMs, as they spoke or as they focused on something, I generated questions. So for me, for each set of OPM, all of my questions were unique to their presentation. So I don't,
but not even prepared ahead of time, I guess, do we wanna know, like, not that we're asking each firm the same question, but Dawn's has this very specific question for applicant number 12 or whatever it is. We don't need to coordinate.
We were-
I'm asking, I'm not
We weren't that strict.
advising.
yeah, I'm comfortable not
Much more
coordinating.
conversational
Yeah,
last time.
Yeah.
It's up for discussion, but.
And so along those lines, I guess I would like to see, I forget the exact timeline that we talked about for the interview, but I think we had a pretty compressed Q&A section.
it was
Uh,
an hour, 40-20, was
I think it was
With
an
a
hour
15
total
minute
with
in
a 15
between.
in between, right?
And yeah, I mean, that 40-20 can be flexible, like, we're not the MSBA, we're not gonna put a timer on and call them
Right.
on it, like, that's what the MSBA literally does.
Yeah, I guess I
I know
just
you
feel
have, I know you have ideas about this, and,
Yeah.
we're in the middle of this, but let's still stick with.
Okay, yeah, we're not there, that's fine.
No, keep
Yep.
keep going with this.
Well, no, I guess I feel like I had a number of questions coming out of and I, specific questions for each of the various five. So I would like to see ample time to really dive into the details via questions. And I guess I'm a little less interested in their stock presentation.
So if there's something that you think that people haven't answered, one of the things we can do is we can actually let them know it's an hour, 40-20, and some of the things that we want you to touch base on are X, Y, Z.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
That is what we did with the OPMs.
Great.
But let's revisit again, timeline, or time allotted to each one, because you were not of a mind that we necessarily
just
had
like
enough.
to-
And Mike needs to know this,
Yeah,
needs to know our agreement on this now for
Right.
Monday.
I question whether 15, 20 minutes is enough time.
Do you have an example of a question you might ask?
Oh, man.
This is what happens.
Yeah, now I put myself in, now I
I'm
stepped
trying to
in it,
understand
right?
the level of detail to which you're trying to go.
I don't have one off the top of my head. But I feel like there will be a lot of dialogue. I mean,
My assumption is I'm gonna have questions for each one.
right,
Let's say I have 5 or 6 questions for each one. If they haven't answered at least 3 or 4 of those in their presentation, they
Exactly.
probably missed the point.
Exactly.
So it doesn't mean that there's gonna be 1 or 2 that I can't ask, but
right.
I think a lot of the questions that I have for them, they should be able to, that's why we're giving them the time in front of us,
Got it,
is to answer all those questions you can't just put on a piece of paper.
got it, okay.
Or
Thank
spend more time focusing on something that you felt was important, but in a proposal, you have a paragraph or a page or
Right.
whatever, a limited amount.
you. I'm good with that 40-20.
So it's 40, 20, 15 turnover,
Yeah.
something like that?
And I think I can make it clear when I'm talking to them that we're saying it's 40-20, but if it ends up being 30-30 or, whatever, don't feel like you have to drone on for 40 minutes if you can get the
Right,
message
right,
out in
yeah.
30.
Mhm.
Right.
I'll be totally honest with you, as someone that interviews in front of the MSBA more than I want to, and have done interviews outside of the MSBA, the beauty of it is it can be interactive, and they may say, instead of us standing here just presenting, if you have a question in the middle of it, feel free to ask
Just
us.
talk, just
Okay.
Like it can be more conversational, back and forth. That also can start to establish relationships that you're comfortable having a dialogue and versus me standing here awkwardly presenting something
Sure.
and then you're generating questions and then waiting till the end. I wouldn't say we should do that without them prompting that, but some may say, hey, can this be more interactive, more conversational? Because for me as an interviewer, I prefer that. I do not like just being the sole person talking for 20 minutes.
Right.
So that's something that can be flexible, and we have that because the MSBA is very rigid in how they do
Right.
things, but since we are not under that rigidity, we can do whatever we want. And it can be a loose 40-20, or
Yep.
if someone goes to 50, that's okay. Maybe they answered all our questions and we're just like, hey, thanks a lot, like you guys were great.
Okay.
So,
Great, thank you.
All right, with that then,
Sorry, Cord, I have one actually
go ahead.
other question. I don't know if this is the right time. So I'm wondering along those lines, we're not MSBA. I mean, this has been a request for services to date, right? And I understand that the traditional process is we would pick one and then their fee would be negotiated at the end.
Mhm.
Are we allowed to ask for bids?
No.
at this point?
No,
That's
still
a state
law.
MSBA or
It's
state
against the
law?
law.
State.
Got it.
Still
Okay.
laws.
If it was a contractor, there's an avenue that you can do that with a contractor. For designer services, it's different laws.
qualification based.
Yes.
Got it.
Because they want you to pick the most qualified, not the lowest.
Connecticut is not, as
Well,
an example.
because we're required to pick the lowest bid bidder.
Yeah, thank goodness it's qualifications
Thank goodness,
based,
that's
that's
right.
should be a
It is.
other
Don't worry
side.
Thank
about it.
goodness.
Yeah.
Right,
But you should also, it's important to go on the MSBA. They advertise every single project that they do, what the fees they get are. So someone, I would hope, isn't gonna come in and ask for a 30% fee. Like that's out of the norm,
Right.
right? So and the beauty of the process is we get the benefit of their, their information and their data.
Yeah.
Right.
It's common knowledge what you get for designer fees.
Yeah, I mean, that was just my question. We can't use, like right now, we can't use competition to control our costs for the design fee.
No, I mean, the expectation is that, I would say if we have 5 designers, that if we ask for pricing, I bet you they'd all be within a very tight window.
Okay.
Because like Don said, it's pretty common, especially with the NSBA projects. You know what you're typically gonna
You know
expect.
the lane.
And I don't think anybody's gonna vary that greatly.
And honestly, we're just talking about feasibility and SD, let's not
Correct.
lose
This is
sight of
only the
that.
first
We've
part.
already allocated money, that doesn't mean we have to spend it all, that was a not to exceed. So we wanna get the most for our money and in a perfect world, have some to give back, right?
Yep.
So have some savings, and I think we've been pretty transparent about that from the beginning. We wanted to make sure we had enough to cover what we needed, but also want to make good
Yep.
fiscal decisions, so,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, that's why I was trying to get some competition, but if we can't do that, then
it is illegal.
And that amount, the amount we were allocated includes commissioning.
No.
No, this first phase would not have
First phase
commissioning.
doesn't include.
Oh, so what the
commission.
town approved does not include,
It only gets us through SD.
The town's,
Schematic.
yeah, it's on this first year.
that answers the question.
So we have before us then the applicants we've numbered 5, 6, 7, 12, and 13 on our big chart provided this morning. Do we have a motion to move those forward to in form of a recommendation to the school building committee?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? My suspicion is, in fact, my prediction is, we're going to be expected to, in fact, obligated to provide a little bit of context to these recommendations.
Absolutely.
And the time between now and Monday morning is rather short. But at the very least, I think the committee's going to want to hear what were the particular merits about now candidate 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, as we renumber them. Would it also be, not a leading question, I'm curious, would it also be helpful to suggest examples of the kind of specific inquiries we would expect to make during the interview process? That idea of what Mike is going to front load a candidate with in terms of, this is what I heard in the sorting on October 25. We'd like it if you talk about this. We'd like it if you talk about that. Is that germane for Monday morning and useful to them as well? Or is it more than we need? Do we stick with just what we consider to be their unique strong suits?
That's what I remember happening with the OPM, was a committee very interested in the rationale for why those groups moved forward. So I think we want to be able to talk on some of what,
Yeah, I wonder
Got us
if we
here.
rely, I know we didn't talk specific numbers, but is it worth compiling all of our numbers for these, at least for these top 5 and seeing,
I'm gonna
relying on that as a score?
My bias is we go more toward qualitative,
Okay.
narrative-based analysis. Because I think the numbers can get overinterpreted at
Yeah.
this point.
Okay.
Just my thinking.
You
Yeah,
don't want
I
those
tend-
those leaking out either, so.
Yeah, and I tend to be with you, because then you're in these things
Yeah.
that might qualitatively seem significant, and someone says, well, is that a 15 or a 14? And then you start getting that micro.
Dancing on the head of a pin pretty fast.
Right.
Sure.
Could we do it? We should. I think that we can.
I'm not
You have a
wedded to that idea.
Yeah. Please, from the floor, Carla?
I'm Carlin Reed, 83 Woods End. Something that might help in explaining part of your description is for Mr. Carroll's bid chart ranking, 1, 2, 3, to be explained a little bit, because we didn't have that in the context of this discussion to any great detail. So the difference between a 1 and a 2 for the bid chart portion of that. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you very much. So I hear that to mean that at the very least would be reviewed Monday morning.
So we would
Let's
go
look
through-
again, have the entire committee hear what the
For
criteria
for
were.
each 14,
Yeah.
we would say 1, 2, or 3 for each of them.
No,
No.
5.
Okay.
We're going to be,
Carlin, correct me if I'm wrong, I heard you saying, let's make doubly clear what the 20 rating criteria were.
Yes, but my comment was only directed for Mr. Carroll's section about what the difference between a rank 1 and a 2 are. That was not explained in the context of this meeting. As the video tape will show, all of your description on it will show up, but why he said 1 versus 2 is not on the record at this point.
Okay.
It may be relevant, it may not, it's just something I'm offering.
Thank you. So I'm gonna try to add some clarity to that right now and ask you to listen carefully, committee, see if you agree. A 1 meant we want this organization to go forward for further consideration. A
Great.
2 meant let's not forget it today. Let's debate the merits of moving a number 2 into our number 1 tier later today if we see fit. And number 3 was, it is our consensus at this time that this is not a group that's going to move forward. But those rankings 1, 2, and 3 were not cast in stone that would have denied anybody in this group to say, I want to make a case for any kind of move whatsoever. Everybody had complete latitude to re-argue any case. Is this
Agreed.
an overstating, or is that?
No, and I think it's fair that we had movement, certainly between those, whatever we thought were the 2 groups and 1 groups, to lead to our 5 finalists.
Is that clear enough? Because I'm wondering if you're thinking, like, is there a line in the sand? Like, from a numbers standpoint?
From my personal perspective, I think your approach is fine. I think it would help if you did have some record of why Mr. Carroll placed for the bid chart just that one portion of 1 versus 2. Because that component is the only piece I think is missing.
Right, so I don't think I placed the number, the committee placed the number, I just wrote it down. But I think maybe to put it into, I'll say MSBA terms, a number 1 is most preferred, a number 2 is preferred, and a number 3 is less preferred. It doesn't mean that anybody's bad, it just means in the ranking here, it was, we were trying to find the most preferred options so that those are the ones that we would want to move forward with an interview.
And I think, and I'm just speaking for myself, my criteria was in my numbers that I had. I sort of had 3 tiers of, and the highest tier was any scoring over, say, 150. We had up to 210, 150 and above. Anything under 100 was a 1 for me. So, and that's just mine. And to be honest with you, after discussion, sorry, I told you to check my work today. The number 3s all, for me, scored under 100 qualitative points based on our list of all the 20 items or whatever it was. So that's how I put them into buckets. I said, okay, the lowest scoring. There were 3 clear delineated groups for me. And to be honest, some of my 2s ended up as a 1 because they were other people's 1s.
Right.
But they were sort of on the cusp. Like I had a 158 as a 1, and that group ended up being a 2 based on other people's. So that would have dropped. Does that make sense? So I think if that's helpful that was where I, as one member,
Yeah.
placed my.
And sort of to echo that, so we don't get overly quantitative, my distribution is roughly the same. My scale internally may have been different.
Yeah,
It's the way we
exactly.
grade.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
by,
So
through the process, you could say, yes, my lower group was roughly the same, even if individually I scored things differently to come up with it.
exactly.
So
Well,
my lower range was probably a different range, and my
Yeah.
higher range was sort of a higher range too. But again, it shook into those 3, most preferred, not preferred.
yeah, it wasn't until last night that I looked at my summary sheet that I was like, wow, there are 3 clear ranges, right?
Yeah,
And that
it is
was
sort of
what was
remarkable how
important.
that shook out.
Yeah.
I think for everybody individually doing their own.
Because that was not the preconceived
No, none of us.
design or intent.
Yeah.
It was rank each one on their merits as we see them in
Right.
front of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With this uniform scoring sheet to guide us
Mhm.
in every case. Yeah,
Knowing
so-
it would then be part of a discussion,
Yes.
and not a
Exactly.
straight calculation.
Yeah.
So to make a longer story short, and I think Carlin, thank you for bringing this forward. I think what we've witnessed in our work today is a consensus-driven conversation that led ultimately to a formal declaration that those that surfaced as most preferred indeed are formally declared as most preferred. I think I'm sensing a comfort around that. Unanswered is the question, what do we do and how do we do it to prepare for Monday
Right.
morning?
Right.
And one way to do it perhaps is for each of us to take 15 minutes while this is fresh in our minds and put into your email box, Lori, or mine, whatever protocol dictates, 2 or 3 of the significant merits of candidate 1, candidate 2, candidate 3, candidate 4. So we have those talking points. That would be one way to go. And again, I am newer to this process than many of you around the table. What's going to work for us between now
I
and
like that idea, Court, I think, and I would say that if it get consolidated with one person,
Yeah.
and then have one person just talk about the 5 teams, so that we don't have different people advocating and emphasizing different things.
With time being of the
Consistent.
essence, if people wanna send it to me,
It's
or
like we're gonna
I'll
offer.
consolidate
It's
the
almost
list.
like,
Sure.
Mike,
So our point is, our comments
I'm too
about the
happy to
merits
have
of
you.
life, well, for each one of these groups, we can, in the email, should we refer to them by number or?
You can,
Or
you
by
can
name.
call them whatever is easiest for you. I mean, I know the names, I know the numbers.
I mean, ultimately, their name will be revealed, and we're at that
Yeah.
cusp of what
Yeah.
gets revealed publicly and
Yeah.
doesn't.
So-
I think
What
for
is-
clarity and no more confusion on the numbers, I'd start using their names.
Okay.
That's
We're
fine,
gonna
yeah.
announce.
So send me the names, and I would say, if you have questions, to your point, Matt, if you have some questions, feel free to add those in there too, because what I can do is say,
Sure.
look, here's, you know, the good parts for applicant 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the consensus was, this is a question that we should ask of everybody, or something like that, you know, and just let everybody
Sure.
know.
And Mike, we can get these to you by this weekend.
Give us a-
I can't guarantee I can get to you by the close of
Give us a
business today.
cutoff, when are you gonna be able to get to it?
I mean,
It's
we're meeting at
7:30
7:30 Monday morning, so, the sooner the better.
Right.
I'd
I
like
was
to
gonna say, I
say,
think you've gotta do it tomorrow morning, that's.
Well, that's my
really
point,
key.
I was saying I couldn't
There.
promise by 1
Yeah.
o'clock today.
If we
I
gave,
no, I'm not gonna dump it on you Sunday night.
if we gave ourselves a 10 AM tomorrow morning, are you gonna have a window after 10 AM tomorrow?
yes, we'll get it done.
Is that suitable for folks?
Sorry, Mike, thank you.
No, that's fine.
And would you be prepared to,
The only thing I might do is I might have to email it to you so that you can print it on Monday morning,
No
because I might
problem.
not be going to the office. to
Fine.
get it.
You won't be,
Okay.
no, it's fine, no problem.
Can I make a suggestion to say to each of the 5 firms, and I'm playing my cards a little bit because this is what I do, but I think it's important to differentiate. They got here because of their qualifications.
Yes.
We now want to hear their ideas, right? So
Yeah.
that's not to say they can't use a prior project to demonstrate something, but I think they don't need to revisit all
Yeah.
their projects that
Yeah.
they've
Come talk
listed
about
as
Concord,
relevant.
Yeah.
What I do is say, okay, now that got me to the table, right? Now I need to focus on them, what they're trying to solve, and so as a piece of information, I'm gonna be upset if this just gets rehashed when they're
Yeah.
here. Like, bring new things, bring new ideas, bring new solutions
Yeah.
that are,
And that also may speak to some of the merits we conveyed to the committee at large,
Mhm.
saying they're here because they've already demonstrated
Yep.
some of these things we want to see, Concord specific.
yeah, I think if you look at the process that way, it's like, this gets you to the table, like what you've previously done and showcased, and maybe they've, dabbled a little in ideas, that's great, and I was arguably maybe more critical than I should have been, because they made an effort at least, not everyone did. But now is the time to demonstrate like fresh ideas and or build on what they started.
Yeah.
So,
It also encourages conversation.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what we want. I like the conversational mode for these 5 sessions.
Is it also fair if we have any negatives to say that to you, there's a gap we want filled, that's okay at this stage to say merits, questions,
Yeah.
or.
merits questions?
Yeah, let's say merits and questions rather than merits and negatives, but,
Right,
yeah,
well,
and I think
yeah.
that's exactly the point.
Right,
yeah.
right, you can always, something that you think as a whole to be filled.
Yeah, something
Could be
that-
perceived negative, but a question to be answered.
There was a couple things we talked about today that I said if they were to get to the interview, that's definitely something I'd ask about, so that type of thing, yeah.
So I think we know a way forward on this. I'm gonna move to our next item, and that is the designer interview process, which we've spoken to. There's only one piece that might need some clarity, and that is, we know the format, but we're gonna need to get clear on the rubric that we'd be using at that stage.
Right.
Can you speak to that, or is the sentiment that we use the same rubric all over again? Anybody offer up anything there?
I forget what we
Just
did for you guys. I think it was,
I think we did.
I think we, that feels like a year ago. I think we just had discussion after the last interview,
I think we
like
kept a
who
rubric
rose to the
in
top.
front of us, but.
Yeah, as a,
Rubric in front, and then went to flip chart and started to sift and sort, something like that.
it was more conversational.
It was
like-
more
Yeah.
conversational.
I think I would almost keep it in front of me, but a blank one,
Mm,
without any preconceived
Fine.
notions from the packages.
right.
Just so that when you're sitting there listening to
Yeah.
them, you kind of, oh, did they hit that point, did they hit that point? It's a
Got it.
cheat sheet for you to kind of think back of what's
Okay.
important, but I wouldn't be really scoring them.
Back to my point about it being like new, for me, that criteria was mostly this, like, did they have a list of the last, 10 years of projects that those are, I'm not looking for that in an interview, I don't actually care, they've already proven it or they wouldn't be here, right? So for me, I'm looking for solutions, ideas, creativity, uniqueness, like, I'm looking for more of the design and the process, understanding the process, demonstration of like possible solutions or directions we can go. That's for me. So I don't have a score sheet for that.
And
I mean-
for me, one of the big parts is the face-to-face, is the fit to this community, and
Yeah.
Mhm.
that's a lot more qualitative, so.
Right. So I don't know how to answer.
I think we just did. Are we on
Okay.
board with that?
Yes.
Okay,
That's
good.
just how my brain works,
Thank you.
but
The folks who have joined us today have demonstrated considerable stamina. Thank you. Thank you, and we didn't even give you any light. Are there any public comments at this time?
Yes, I do have one. I just wanna,
Could
you
you
just-
state your name and address, please?
every time. Linda Neiman, 59 Mallard. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about applicant 2, who had a really good sustainability. Don said it was 12 out of 15, and they have a net zero building in Cambridge that they're working on. And just wondering if it's worthwhile to talk with them, and if not, what your thoughts were on that.
So I did not rank applicant number 2 as highly in the sustainability realm. I don't know what, I have to get my computer open. I think that,
did you say I said a 12?
Yes.
See, my math needs to be checked. I'm looking at my chart. Number 2, I have a 10. I mean, that's not that different in the whole scheme of things.
yeah, and I can
But I
tell
didn't
you
make any
what I-
notes, which leads me to believe that there wasn't, like, it was good, but not like standout. I don't know, because if it was standout, I would have made a note about that, because I had a lot of sustainability notes.
It was not,
Um,
right, I would agree that it was not standout compared to
I
other
had a
firms.
12 in the row.
And I,
Stand out based on their experience or their design, just wanting to understand your thought process.
Yeah.
for me, they were not, like, from a strictly sustainability point of view, they were not in the top bucket.
And for me, I think I spoke about it, their experience was more they don't have any standalone middle schools. And with the one school, there was an embedded middle, but it was whatever, pre-K or preschool to 8. And that there were only 1 or 2 total public MSBA schools in the experience. That's not to, again, they were on my cusp, and they were actually in my number 1 bucket, but on the low end. So my reference to how things were sort of fluid, they fell into the 2. And I was fine with that because they were on the low end of my 1. They didn't have any schedule information, so they got low points on that for me. Those were most of in 2 places I commented no schedule, no comment on schedule, not. So that was, for me, something that we have proven is important to us. I think we made that quite clear. So for me, it was the relevant experience as in like unique to middle school and public schools, but then also the, lacking in a schedule being one of them particulars.
Yeah,
I don't
the
know
other
what
things I would say, sorry, Ben.
No, please, I'm done.
To cut you off. So I scored them a 10 as well, which I don't think is extremely strong in that category. There were, the ones that I have in my number buckets are 13s and 14s. I think they talk about from a sustainability perspective, they talk about a project that is in Acton, that is that is not completed yet. And so there's a tendency in the design world to talk about how great a project will be that is not done. And then when it gets completed, it doesn't live up to that expectation and you don't hear about it anymore. And so,
To be fair, that was why I asked when Charlie earlier was commenting on another project, and I said, is it built yet? And he said
Right.
no, but to be
Right.
fair, that's why I asked that question, because I know that.
that's a frequent issue within the kind of design world.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, I think they do have some good points. They talk about the red list, which is chemicals of concern, so that's nice. They don't mention passive house, which, I think we're still discussing whether or not we're gonna go for, but I guess I use that, we put it in the RFS. And so I'm using that as kind of a litmus test to see how much people paid it, whether, I know there's skepticism about the reality of whether we could do it. There were firms who went out and found a consultant and paid attention to it and directly addressed it. I mean, I mentioned that there are two. There were other firms who at least talked about it. I don't think number two even mentioned it in their whole submission.
To be fair, I didn't dock them for that, because I know no one in Massachusetts public schools has ever done a net zero. So in my mind, and then that's the beauty of having a
That's why you're
diverse
both here.
group, is that I recognize, okay, they're doing exciting things, but the fact that they didn't even mention passive house, okay, so like you could say, maybe I docked them because we mentioned it and they didn't mention it, but on the flip side, I know that that's a super hard, credential to have, so the people who did got a few higher points, but I didn't dock anyone for not, if that makes sense. And for what it's worth, like that project in Cambridge is very sustainable, and we were talking about it earlier with the other architect, because two of them worked on it. Like none of them really celebrated it or were excited about it, which was curious, because they definitely talk, they use it as one of their 8A, relevant projects, but then the understanding of it and how that could be applied here was lacking in both of those cases for me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But both those were rated reasonably high as twos, I think.
They were,
Yeah,
They were,
yes.
Yeah.
and honestly, the
Yes.
applicant number 2 was low on
Yeah.
my one, so I definitely,
Very
completely
strong
capable.
contenders, yeah.
yeah, but I felt like others felt like they were a little bit lower on their scale, so I
I think we also said a lot of the sustainability stuff came from a very strong community. Or we would think as much. We know they have advantages in that area. But
I mean, for me, if someone has that experience, I wanna know how it's gonna benefit me, as an owner or the next project, right? You learn something along the way every time, and so anything, good or bad, you might learn that trying to go down a road that's impossible to go down is not time well spent, that's also important to the next client,
And
right?
things like that have to be fleshed out in interviews for those groups.
They can be.
So Linda, is that helpful?
Yes, thank you very much.
Other public comments?
Yes,
please.
Laura Davis, 330 Garfield Road, and I'm here with Mothers Out Front as well. And I'm just interested to know a little bit more about how you scored applicant 5 on sustainability. Based on the comments that you all made, the sustainability credentials were a little less clear for them than they were for the other shortlist applicants. It sounded like there was enthusiasm, but there was no discussion about previous experience or passive house, how they addressed the passive house issue.
They also had a 10, they were the same
They were also
for me, yeah.
But they made it on your short list, so what made them
They
different?
did, yep, so my comments on them, overall great proposal, focused on us, as in Concord, understanding us and not just being generic about, architecture, but really what our issues are. Demonstrated experience through project solutions, which for me is important. Again, to my point earlier, what did you learn that's relevant, right? We're all trying to solve things, and learning along the way is important. And then I said they weren't just writing about themselves, which I already said, and great cover letter, which was well written as far as relevance. They had good site exploration. They had their classrooms faced like on an angle, and I said I'd really hope for true north-south, but that's not for, like, that's something that can be flushed out. And then a lot of the other things, like they spent good time on QA/QC, cost control, like, I guess I would say a better balanced proposal.
Yes, it is.
I-
It is
I'd agree.
probably my
Yeah,
consensus on that.
I'd say that's right, and those three other groups, they were very strong, and maybe they weren't as strong on sustainability, but not fatally so.
Yeah, you're saying number 5?
Correct.
Yeah, they did, in my mind, so 2/3 of a full amount of points, they got 2/3 from me, so they did a good job. I had others who scored higher, you know.
I think Chris said it right. I mean, like within our 5 number ones, they're the lowest scoring with regards to sustainability for me. And so, a question that I'll send to Mike is from them specifically. I would like to see during the interview process how they're going to step up on that issue.
13. I'm just looking what I have for the 5 people. I have a 13 and 14 for a couple of the others.
Right.
Like on sustainability, so I had 10, 13, 14, just like out of curiosity, because I guess I didn't look at it that way. A 14 and also a 10, interesting. That's on one that you guys felt stronger. That particular firm was on my 2, but on the high side, and they were on
Which number is
your
that one?
ones. They were one of the ones I confused, so I actually don't know the answer. Let me look. 13.
Oh.
So I hope that's helpful. I appreciate the questions, we appreciate the questions. Our intent is to make our thinking as visible as possible and our decisions as clear to the community as can possibly be done. Other public comments? Hearing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Is a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for your
Thank you,
time
Court.
today.
Thank you, Court.
11.
I have to run to